Chapter 4:16. Zhan Xiaotian's strength is not ordinary. Dai Mubai continued Tang San's words. The two enhancements should be speed and soul power. The Berserk Battle Beast's strength and defense were already top-notch. It was born with an extremely strong immunity to all sorts of conditions, and almost didn't have any weaknesses. Its only weakness was that it wasn't very fast. Therefore, one of the two enhancements should be speed, while the other was soul power enhancement. This way, he won't have any weaknesses. He's an unbeatable war god. The truth was just as Dai Mubai had said. The two enhancements were speed and soul power. Ares College's strategy was simple. Zhan Xiaotian was too strong and had the strength to crush a team. As long as he became stronger, the opponents would have no chance of winning. At this moment in midair, two bolts of lightning came crashing down. A black longbow quickly formed in Wang Feng's hands, and almost at the same time he landed, 9 pitch-black arrows shot out. They turned into 9 streaks of light and shot through the 2 bolts of lightning. However, only one of the 9 arrows was aimed at the Thunderbird Soul Master. As for the other 8, they fell from the sky almost simultaneously. And the location where they fell was where the Metal-type Soul Master was. Seeing this, their expressions changed. Long Yang, the Metal-type Soul Master shouted, "Don't let these arrows land on my metal ball." This guy purposely jumped into midair to let Long Yu attack him. He wants to use Long Yu's lightning to attack us. His metal ball was conductive too. Once hit, the 2 Soul Masters inside would be in trouble. Got it. Long Yang was the Soul Master with the Mud Loach martial soul. Seeing the 8 arrows with purple lightning falling, Long Yang's palm condensed and he threw out several bolts of mud. However, these 8 arrows suddenly changed. They immediately merged into 2 long blades and narrowly avoided several streams of mud. Seeing this, the few of them were even more shocked. F***CK. This 9-opening soul bone is really hard to defend against. Captain, Long Yang said softly. Zhan Xiaotian calmly replied. At this moment, he, who had received 2 enhancements, was even shorter. He had returned to his normal height of about 2 meters, but he gave off an even more terrifying feeling. He abruptly leaped high into the air and punched the front of a sharp blade that was falling down. He used his physical body to block the blade formed by the mysterious underworld spike. Bang! The blade was sent flying. However, his fist was not damaged at all. Although the 2 blades formed by Wang Feng were not sharp and only carried the power of lightning, it was enough to see how strong the opponent's defense was. The other blade continued to fall towards the metal ball. At this moment, Long Yang stepped forward, and his purple soul rings quickly lit up. Third soul skill, Mud Armor. A thin layer of earthy yellow mud armor was crawling all over his skin. His martial soul, Loach Rock, was able to control the earth and form a thin layer of mudstone on his body. This layer of mudstone was able to restrain the power of lightning. This was also the reason why he possessed such outstanding defensive capabilities despite being an agility-type soul master. As long as he was covered with this layer of mud armor, he would be able to block the lightning energy carried by the sharp blade. Boom! Purple lightning crawled all over his body like caterpillars the moment this sharp blade, made of profound nether spike, struck him. However, he was not hurt at all. Only the force of the blade caused him to take a few steps back, and the mud armor on his body quickly cracked. However, he was able to block it. At the same time, the Thunderbird Soul Master in the air was not so lucky. Although there was only 1 arrow flying towards him, he didn't dodge it. More accurately speaking, he did dodge it, but the arrow changed direction slightly and hit him. Fortunately, he was immune to lightning. However, the force of the arrow caused him to fly through the air, and he barely managed to stop himself from falling. Because Wang Feng's power was scattered, only one of the 9 arrows was aimed at him. Therefore, it was not very strong. It had to be said that the 7 of them were very strong. Their powers seemed to counter each other. Wang Feng jumped into the air and lured the Thunderbird's Soul Master to attack him. He wanted to borrow his strength to kill the two auxiliary-type Soul Masters. However, it was clearly countered by the Mudloach Soul Master. More accurately speaking, they must have thought of this when they formed their team. Therefore, they were equipped with a Mudloach Soul Master who could counter lightning. This was to prevent their opponents from using their weaknesses to counter them. This was already a very strong team. Everyone was stunned when they saw this scene. When Wang Feng landed on the ground, he was unavoidably stained by the water on the ground. Coupled with the flashing lightning, he was instantly hit by the lightning. However, the lightning was already weakened. It did not cause much damage to him. Moreover, with his physical fitness, he was not afraid of this level of lightning attack. It was just that it would reduce his speed. Trying to use Cosmic Dragon's lightning to counter us? It's a very smart approach. Unfortunately, our teachers had already considered this point when they formed the team. Zhan Xiaotian slowly stepped forward. His aura surged. That's why they were equipped with a Mudloach martial soul. Wang Feng was silent. No wonder they were the first team in the qualifier round. Just like him, they did not have any weaknesses. This was enough to show the strength of the Star Luo Empire. After all, they were a team that had fought their way out of thousands of enemies. It was not possible for them to use the same method they had used on the Blazing Academy and Skywater Academy. At this moment, the Mudloach Soul Master walked directly to the two auxiliary-type Soul Masters protected by the metal ball. He extended his palms, and an earthy yellow light quickly covered the surface of the metal ball with layers of mud-like armor. This way, there was no way to attack the two auxiliary-type Soul Masters inside. Dewdrop, Mudloach, Thunderbird, and Metal Ball. These four Soul Masters complemented each other. They could combine to deal great damage to their opponent. They could also split up to provide the best protection. They did not use a single elemental attack. Instead, they were extremely balanced. You can't beat us. Admit defeat. Zhan Xiaotian said slowly. Otherwise, if I attack, you will either die or be crippled. Or you can try using your martial soul. Seeing this, countless people fell silent. This war god team was strong. They had no weaknesses. If they wanted to defeat them, they had to use their strength. All right. Wang Feng's hoarse voice came from his mouth. Since you want to try then, soul. Slaying. Beer. A pitch-black soul ring suddenly lit up from Wang Feng's body. He clenched his hand, and an ancient spear suddenly appeared. P.S. Please give me some monthly vote. There are more tonight. End of chapter. Chapter 4:17. The Ares team's flawless strength made many of the remaining academies break out in cold sweat. The Star Luo Empire was still alright, but the Heaven Do Empire was simply dumbfounded. No team dared to say that they had the confidence to defeat the Ares team. Even Tang San's team did not have much confidence. They only said that they were confident. And until now, even the 9-1 odds seemed to be at a loss. The Ares team had no weaknesses. It was obvious that the only way to defeat them was through brute force. When everyone heard Zhan Xiaotian's words, they thought that the 9-1 odds should be at a loss. But Zhan Xiaotian's last sentence made many people wake up with a start. Yes, the 9-1 odds seemed to have a martial soul? And now, under countless gazes, everyone finally saw the 9-1 martial soul and soul ring. Stunned. Silence. It was as if the world had fallen into silence. The pitch-black soul ring represented a 10,000-year soul ring. That simple and unadorned spear exuded a ferocious aura. It was a very simple and unadorned spear. The body of the spear was engraved with crisscrossing lines, and it was completely black. The blade of the spear was also translucent and pitch-black, as if it wanted to devour one's soul. It made people shudder. Almost at the instant this spear appeared, everyone present felt a chill from the soles of their feet. 10,000-year soul ring. An incredulous murmur slowly came out of someone's mouth. This was the fifth 10,000-year soul ring in this year's competition, and it was coming from the 9-1 martial soul. It was extremely strange. From the preliminaries to the promotion round, the 9-1 martial soul had never been revealed. But now, he finally revealed his soul ring and martial soul in the finals. But it was far beyond everyone's expectations. You have twin martial souls? Jean Chautian looked at the 9-1 martial soul with a serious expression. According to the information, the opponent's martial soul was an ordinary axe. But now, he was using a spear. And he only had one soul ring. This meant that the opponent had twin martial souls. Jean Chautian was very clear about what this meant. On the Ares College side, everyone looked at the 9-1 martial soul in shock. Who would have thought that 9 openings would really reveal his martial soul? Originally, he thought that the reason why 9 openings didn't use his martial soul was because his martial soul was too weak. That was why he insisted on using only his physique and the strength of the soul mystic bone to reach this step. Who would have thought that he had a second martial soul? Wang Feng didn't say anything. Even Jean Chautian couldn't hear the words soul-slaying spear that Wang Feng was muttering in his heart. The god-slaying spear's name alone was taboo. The soul-slaying spear was slightly better. Even if it was overheard, it wouldn't matter. Furthermore, Wang Feng wasn't afraid of being seen through, because this was the first time the god-slaying spear had appeared. At most, only Qian Rinxue had seen it before. However, Qian Rinxue hadn't seen what he looked like back in the Great Star Do Forest. When she saw the soul-slaying spear, the most she could think of was that Feng Yuxiu had a 91 split. With the spear in hand, the long-awaited power came. The fourth form of the god-slaying spear had a terrifying attack power. Wang Feng used it now because he did not want to waste time with the other party. Ares College was indeed very strong. If he wanted to use the external soul bone to defeat them, it would take a long time. Go! Jean Chautian shouted coldly. He didn't recognize this spear, but from the aura it gave off, it was definitely not ordinary. Furthermore, it was a 10,000-year soul ring. But even so, Ares College would not back down. Instead, it would ignite the fighting spirit in his heart. In an instant, following Jean Chautian's command, the rest of the people moved quickly. The first to act was the Dewdrop Control-type Soul Master. Without any hesitation, the second droplet of water landed on the ground. This time, when the dewdrop landed on the ground, it instantly dyed the ground black. Fourth soul skill, Water of Tarsus. This was a special water droplet that could greatly reduce the speed of the enemy and reduce all of the enemy's attribute. Once touched, all attributes would be reduced by more than 10%. It was a very powerful group weakening skill. However, this skill didn't differentiate between friend and foe. Even if one of their own walked in, they would also be affected. However, since he dared to do this, the people from Ares College would naturally be prepared. Jean Chautian rushed into the battlefield, but he wasn't affected by the water. His Zhan Meng Beast martial soul made him immune to all abnormal statuses. Not only that, even the lightning's paralysis effect was ineffective against him. Therefore, his martial soul was really very strong. It was also because of this that he was paired with this Dewdrop Soul Master. If this Dewdrop Soul Master was placed in any other team, he would be a useless existence. This was because although this skill was strong, it prevented the Soul Masters from entering the battlefield and could only watch. The other Mudloach Soul Master was the same. His entire body was covered in mud. Not only was he immune to the lightning, his feet also couldn't touch the special water droplet. Following that, the Thunderbird Soul Master in the sky released a few more bolts of lightning onto the arena, causing the entire arena to be filled with all kinds of lightning. However, Jean Chautian and the Mudloach Soul Master were not affected. Crackling sounds could be heard as the lightning flashed on Wang Feng's body. However, he didn't suffer much from the paralysis effect. With his current strength and the soul-slaying spear in his hand, although the paralysis effect was still there, it was very small. However, the reduction of the water droplets on the ground was very real. Wang Feng didn't care about this reduction. Humph! Wang Feng narrowed his eyes as he looked at Zhang Xiaotian. He didn't intend to use a soul skill. He only wanted to use the soul-slaying spear's effect. Wounds that hurt the soul and couldn't be healed. It could quickly cause the enemy to lose their fighting strength. There was no doubt about Zhang Xiaotian's strength. With the amplification of 2 soul masters and his own soul skills, Zhang Xiaotian's defense had reached a very terrifying state. If Wang Feng were to fight him head-on, he wouldn't be able to do much damage in a short period of time. Zhang Xiaotian was still the main offensive of these 3 people, while the other 2 were only supporting him. Although the Mudloach Soul Master was an agility-type Soul Master, Zhang Xiaotian was still faster than him. Third soul skill, Earth-Shaking Hammer. Zhang Xiaotian's speed was increased by an unknown amount. As an assault-type Soul Master, he completely surpassed an agility-type Soul Master. He leapt high into the air, causing countless splashes on the arena. Lightning surrounded his body, making him look like a god of war bathed in lightning as he attacked Wang Feng. He clenched his hands into fists and pressed them together. Layers of silver light flowed around them, and it was as if a huge silver hammer was descending from the sky. A terrifying force exploded in all directions. Wang Feng narrowed his eyes and pointed his spear into the distance. The blade of his spear flickered with a cold light, and countless black lights suddenly formed a huge hammer in the air. He slammed his spear down, and this huge hammer was smashed towards the other Mudloach Soul Master. Before Zhang Xiaotian's attack landed, the Mudloach Soul Master was shocked. This huge hammer was very big, and was at least the size of several of his heads. It was also very fast, and he couldn't react in time. Just as he was about to dodge, the huge hammer seemed to have grown eyes, and instantly changed direction to smash his body. He was quickly sent flying, and the huge hammer didn't lose any momentum as it continued to attack the metallic ball Soul Master. End of chapter. Chapter 4:18. At this moment, Zhang Xiaotian's hands came crashing down on Wang Feng like hammers. Whoosh! A cold light flashed. Wang Feng used his spear to block it. Zhang Xiaotian's hands formed a hammer and hit the spear. Boom! A huge wave of energy exploded from all directions. The stage seemed to be unable to withstand this terrifying force. A small crack appeared beneath Wang Feng's feet. The stage was said to be able to withstand any attack below the level of a Soul Emperor without being damaged. Although the crack was small, one could tell how strong Zhang Xiaotian's attack was. His soul power was amplified to the maximum. Under his high-speed attack, he used his third soul skill, Earth-Shaking Hammer. With the strength of his Zhan Meng beast, this attack was at least at the level of a rank 55 soul warrior. It might even be higher. Earth-Shaking Hammer. With such a name, one could only imagine how strong this soul skill was. However, Wang Feng wasn't hurt at all. Only the stage was slightly damaged. As he was distracted by forming his hammer, Wang Feng didn't have time to use reversal of heaven and earth. He could only block the attack. After all, his body couldn't take any injuries. Very strong. This soul beast is indeed very strong. Wang Feng's god-slaying spear shook slightly and sent Zhang Xiaotian flying. The blade of the spear drew a weird arc and stabbed towards Zhang Xiaotian. Seeing this, Zhang Xiaotian, who was flying backward, felt a chill in his heart. He shouted, "Soul skill, divine stellar wall." His first yellow soul ring lit up. His arm suddenly became very thick. His bronze arm, which was originally covered with thick hair, flashed with a dim light and turned silver gray. This was a defensive-type soul skill. It could make a part of his body extremely tough and increase his defense by 100%. In addition to a layer of soul power barrier, he was also very strong after being possessed by his martial soul. Until now, no soul master below rank 60 had been able to break through this layer of defense. However, in the next moment, the layer of defense was easily penetrated. The spear didn't lose its strength. It moved a few inches and pierced his steel-like arm again, leaving a small wound. Zhang Xiaotian was stunned. He didn't expect his opponent's spear to be so strong. It could easily penetrate his arm, which was protected by a defensive soul skill. However, the wound on his arm was very light. It shouldn't be a problem, rumble. Zhang Xiaotian abruptly landed on the ground, both of his feet drawing a faint long mark on the arena floor. At this time, Jiu Kai slowly walked towards him. Zhang Xiaotian stood up and was about to attack again. However, he found that Kai 9 ignored him and walked toward his teammates behind him. Zhang Xiaotian's expression changed, and a blood-red color appeared in his eyes. The soul force in his body was rapidly drained, and an incomparably cold aura instantly spread throughout his body. The pain from his wounds seemed to be able to touch his soul, and it was unbearable. As soon as he stood up, he knelt on one knee on the ground again, clutching his wounds. Dense beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. This is, Zhang Xiaotian looked at the tiny wound, and his handsome face seemed to be deformed. How could such a small wound bring him such terrifying pain? Moreover, with his own self-healing ability, such a small wound should be very easy to heal. However, this was the wound caused by the god-slaying spear. Even if Zhang Xiaotian's soul power was more than 10 or 20 ranks higher, Wang Feng's spear would have been able to easily wound him, let alone his second defensive soul skill. Furthermore, Wang Feng had shifted slightly. Otherwise, the wound would have been even more severe. The terrifying baleful aura could directly harm his soul, and he wouldn't be able to live for long. Even Ming's body couldn't withstand the god-slaying spear's attack, let alone a rank 40 soul elder like him. To put it bluntly, even a titled Douluo wouldn't be able to withstand it. It was just that Wang Feng might not be able to hit him. The offensive power of the god-slaying spear was second only to that of Pangu's axe. On top of that, the god-slaying spear's attack had a special effect. If Wang Feng had used his soul skill, soul-engulfing blood wings, Zhang Xiaotian's soul power would have been sucked away by Wang Feng, and he would have been in an even worse state. Everyone could only see Jiu Ikai's mysterious spear martial soul gently swipe across Zhang Xiaotian's arm before completely ignoring him. After that, Jiu Ikai passed by Zhang Xiaotian, as if he had already been defeated. However, the reality was that Zhang Xiaotian didn't seem to be able to stand up. Jiu Ikai walked past him, and he didn't stand up again. Instead, he lay sprawled on the ground in excruciating pain, trembling all over. Everyone was astonished to see this. How is this possible? Dai Mubai exclaimed from below the stage. Zhan Meng's defensive prowess is astonishing. It's not much weaker than those Xian turtles. His soul power has been greatly enhanced, and he's even using a defensive soul skill. How could he be wounded by such a light spear? Even if he's wounded, it's only a small wound. Why does he look like he's about to die? Dai Mubai wasn't the only one who was perplexed. Many of the spectators were just as perplexed. Many of the Star Luo Academy students were well aware of just how powerful Zhang Xiaotian was. His defensive prowess was freakish, and even 3 or 4 assault-type soul masters of the same rank as him would find it very difficult to break through his defenses, let alone when he was using a defensive soul skill. At this moment, the Mudfish Martial Soul Master had already been knocked unconscious by Wang Feng's mysterious underworld spike. When Wang Feng was attacking Zhang Xiaotian, the huge hammer was already flying towards the metallic ball soul master behind him. However, the Dewdrop Soul Master wasn't ordinary. He immediately erected a water shield in front of them, causing the huge hammer's momentum to weaken. After that, the metallic Ball Soul Master let out a ferocious roar, and his entire body erupted with a resplendent light. Using his body as a shield, he leapt high into the air and slammed into the huge hammer. Although the huge hammer's momentum was very weak, they clearly didn't expect it to weigh more than 5,000 kilograms. Bang! The metallic ball Soul Master's armor shattered inch by inch, and his entire body flew backwards, crashing into the metal hexahedron that was protecting the two auxiliary-type Soul Masters. Boom! The huge hammer's momentum disappeared, and it directly smashed into the metal hexahedron, creating a huge crater in it. After that, it rebounded violently. Evidently, the metallic ball Soul Master's defensive soul skill had a certain degree of rebounding effect. The rebounding huge hammer turned into countless black streaks of light and flew towards Zhou Kai, who wasn't too far away from them. In the next moment, there was a flash of light. Wang Feng disappeared from where he was once again, and the tip of his spear was like a cold light as it pierced towards the metal hexahedron. Ding! The tip of the spear pierced through the metal hexahedron without any resistance. Wang Feng's palm shook, and the metal hexahedron instantly exploded, revealing the three pale-faced people inside. End of chapter. Chapter 419. At this point, other than the powerless Thunderbird in the air, the entire Ares team had no combat power left. For a moment, everyone was a little stunned. A hoarse voice slowly sounded from behind. "We admit defeat." It was Zhang Xiaotian's voice. He took the initiative to admit defeat. Seeing this, the entire arena was dead silent. The change was too fast. Not long after Zhou Kai revealed his mysterious spear-shaped martial soul, the entire Ares team was defeated without any resistance. Because Wang Feng knew. In fact, the Ares team still had a weakness that could not be considered a weakness. That was Zhang Xiaotian. This person was the core of the team. Without him, the strength of the entire Ares team would be greatly reduced. The reason why Wang Feng wanted to use the God-killing spear was because he did not want to waste time with Zhang Xiaotian. He knew that this person's strength was indeed very strong. In that state just now, he was already close to his first-grade strength. In addition to this water and thunder terrain, as well as the weakening of the special water stains, his physical fitness was not much different from his first-grade physical fitness. And the effect of the God-killing spear was that as long as the opponent was injured, it could quickly make the opponent lose their combat power. There was no need to kill him. He only used the ability of the God-killing spear, and did not even use the soul skill of the God-killing spear. If he used the soul skill, it would be too exaggerated. Thinking about it, Wang Feng decided to just use the God-killing spear. When they heard Zhang Xiaotian admit defeat, the rest of the people stood up in a daze. The Thunderbird Soul Master also descended from the sky. Then, they surrounded Zhang Xiaotian and looked at the trembling captain who seemed to be enduring great pain. They were silent for a moment. "Let's go." Zhang Xiaotian looked at Zhou Kai in a daze. The cold pupils under the black mask seemed to emit an aura of death, which made him a little scared. After saying that, he walked down the arena with the help of several team members. At this point, the referee suddenly woke up and announced, "Purple Star College, victory." Following his words, the entire arena was in an uproar. Zhou Kai won again. And this time, he showed a new martial soul and a 10,000-year soul ring. This was the first time Wang Feng used the God-killing spear in the competition. Although it was short, it directly determined the outcome. At this moment, the words, 9 open, twin martial souls, 10,000-year soul ring, began to spread throughout the entire tournament. It was also fortunate that there were no other spectators in this competition, only the various academies. Otherwise, the name of the 9-to-1 tournament would have spread even further. After this battle, the remaining 14 teams were practically praying that they wouldn't encounter 9-1. Twin martial souls. "Teacher, this is the second twin martial soul I've seen," Tang San whispered. "His spear martial spirit seems to be extraordinarily powerful. It's definitely not an ordinary spear martial spirit." There were many types of spear martial spirit. However, it was clear that this spear martial spirit not only had a terrifying attack power, it also seemed to have an extremely special effect. With Zhang Xiaoyan's strength, how could a small wound cause him to lose his combat strength? If it wasn't for the fact that this was the finals, many people would have thought that this was a rigged match. The Grandmaster nodded his head and thought to himself, this should be the fourth form of Little Feng's Azure Lotus martial spirit, right? It turned out that he had been saving it all this time, intending to use it during the finals. This 9-1 tournament is too strong. Twin martial souls, not to mention his ordinary axe, just this spear and that 10,000-year soul ring, who can withstand it? Ma Hongjun scratched his head. Moreover, I seem to have discovered a secret just now. He didn't use any soul skill at all. Ma Hongjun had always been envious of 9-1 tournament. At first, he only envied the other party's dazzling soul bone, which could transform into various forms and kill people invisibly. Ma Hongjun felt that he would never be able to do that in his entire life. He didn't expect that the other party's second martial soul would be so powerful. There's a very terrifying fiendish aura on that spear. Lu Erlong frowned. This martial soul is definitely not ordinary. Little gang, can you recognize it? The master shook his head. Lin Feng's Green Lotus martial soul was indeed a rare martial soul in the world. He had never seen every form of it before. Its functions were even more strange. Even with his knowledge, he didn't know anything about it. Wow, fortunately, he has a bye in the second round tomorrow. Ning Rongrong said happily, we happen to have a bye in the third round. Even if we meet him, we will only have a chance to meet him in the fourth round. There was no other way, he was too strong. The strength displayed by 9-1 tournament gave the seven of them the feeling that it would be very difficult to defeat him. He was even more difficult to defeat than the Martial Spirit Palace's golden generation that they had never seen before. After all, those three people had never appeared before. But 9-1 tournament was indeed what they had been watching all along. That kind of strength had long been imprinted in their minds. At the same time, at the front of the VIP trial seat, sitting here were the representatives from the two empires. Qian Rinxue clenched his hands almost at the first moment that Long's spear appeared. Qinghe, what's wrong with you? Ning Fengji seemed to have noticed his disciple's sudden action and couldn't help but ask in surprise. No, nothing, teacher. Qian Rinxue forced a smile. I didn't expect this 9-1 tournament to have twin martial souls. It's really amazing. However, she was muttering in her heart, Feng Yuxiu, it's definitely you. I don't believe that there's another person with this outfit, this voice, this martial soul. But why did he come here? Qian Rinxue suppressed the confusion and excitement in his heart. Half a year ago, the time in the Great Star Do Forest was short, but she often recalled it and couldn't forget it. That mysterious figure was also unforgettable. There were even a few times when she wanted to go back to the Great Star Do Forest to see if Feng Yuxiu was still there. But she resisted because she knew that it wasn't suitable for her to leave Heaven Do City for too long. Later, a similar figure appeared in the qualifiers. When Qian Rinxue saw a 9-1 tournament for the first time, she had a deep suspicion in her heart. But she didn't dare to be sure. After all, it was just two identical outfits, and there were too many possibilities. But when she found out that the other party was related to Feng Yuxiu, she was pleasantly surprised. That was why she gave the other party her grandfather's token to help him get through the difficulties of the Platinum Bishop. But it's very dangerous for you to come here. Qian Rinxue clenched his hands slightly. The aura of the Dark Angel Martial Soul was too evil. With the will of the Martial Soul Hall, if her grandfather knew about such an evil martial soul, not to mention the Pope, he would be the first to punish him. It would also be easy for that woman to find an excuse to attack him. But you saved me twice. Qian Rinxue looked at the figure on the stage who had already won. The shock in his eyes did not disappear. Ning Fengji looked at his disciple's eyes and couldn't help but sigh. This 9-1 tournament is really shocking. Ning Fengji didn't think much about the various expressions in his disciple's eyes. To be honest, he couldn't suppress his shock. But speaking of which, Lin Feng is not bad either. Ning Fengji thought to himself, with the power of the Ice Flame Fury Lotus, it can even hurt the soul Doulu. How can it be worse than this 9-1 tournament? Rongrong, you have to do it. End of chapter. Chapter 420. The first round of the competition ended just like that. In today's competition, there were 2 matches that shocked Tang San and the rest the most. One was the God Wind Academy. That's right. Although the Blazing Academy had admitted defeat, the Blazing Academy and the God Wind Academy had joined forces. The combination of the two was extremely powerful, and they had won the competition in a crushing manner. This was obviously a loophole in the rules, and they had colluded with the Martial Spirit Palace. Although the finals did not allow for substitutions, they could change academies, but the Martial Spirit Palace had to make an exception. The second was naturally 9-1 Kai. He had released his second spear Martial Soul and defeated the Ares Academy in a crushing manner. The strength of twin Martial Souls made many academies, and even the Martial Spirit Palace, have to re-evaluate the strength of 9-1 Kai. Night. Martial Spirit City, in a hotel. How could it be? Why couldn't the medical-type Soul Master of the Martial Spirit Palace save Xiaotian? A man in a teacher's uniform roared. In front of him, there was a man in the Martial Spirit Palace's uniform with a calm expression. On the hospital bed, Zhang Xiaotian was sweating all over. His whole body was tense. Although he did not scream, anyone could see that he was enduring great pain. He had been like this since the end of the competition. Although there were medical-type Soul Masters accompanying him, they were completely ineffective. In desperation, the leading teacher of the Ares Academy had to go to the Martial Spirit Palace to find a high-level medical-type Soul Master to treat him. Sorry, I'm only level 54. The man in the Martial Spirit Hall's deacon robe shook his head. However, there is a rank 76 medical-type Soul Sage in the main hall. He might be able to treat you. However, the Soul Sage only treats people from the Martial Spirit Hall. If the Ares College joins the Martial Spirit Hall, I can report this to the higher-ups and let the Soul Sage treat you. Hearing this, the teacher fell silent. The rest of the team members also fell silent. The Ares Academy was the most prestigious academy in the Star Luo Empire. How could they join the Martial Spirit Palace? Otherwise, you can let him join the Martial Spirit Palace alone. The Martial Spirit Palace's deacon continued, if he joins the Martial Spirit Palace, our Soul Sage can help him. Obviously, he wanted Zhang Xiaotian to join the Martial Spirit Palace. He also saw Zhang Xiaotian's potential. Indeed, with Zhang Xiaotian's Zhang Meng Giant Beast Martial Soul, any force would value him highly. No need. Zhang Xiaotian's consciousness was in a daze, but he could still speak intermittently. Thank you for your kindness, Martial Spirit Palace. Hearing this, the deacon's expression changed. He snorted coldly and stood up to leave. According to the Pope's instructions, if Zhang Xiaotian didn't intend to join the Martial Spirit Palace, they didn't have to worry about him. Seeing the deacon of the Martial Spirit Palace leave, the room became even more silent. What the hell is that spear Martial Spirit with a 91 opening? Cosmic Dragon gritted his teeth and said, it's so powerful that it can't even heal such a wound. Even with their captain's strength, he was unable to withstand it. If they were to be hit by it, wouldn't they die on the spot? Fortunately, the captain had admitted defeat in time, and that 9-1 had no intention of hurting them. What should we do, Teacher Tian? The other team members looked at the teacher leading the team. The teacher was as anxious as an ant on a hot pan, but there was nothing he could do. At this moment, outside the window, a cool breeze suddenly blew, and a pitch-black figure suddenly appeared. 9-1 opening. The Dewdrop Soul Master abruptly shouted, instantly attracting everyone's attention. What are you doing here? Teacher Tian looked out of the window, his pupils constricted, and he said coldly. After saying that, 7 soul rings lit up on his body, and he looked at 9-to-1 opening with extreme vigilance. Don't worry, I'm not here to cause trouble. 9-to-1 opening said in a hoarse voice, if you want him to live, all of you get out. I can hurt him, and I can naturally save him. Don't refute, you have no reason to choose. The Martial Spirit Palace won't save you, and they can't save you. The soul-slaying spear's attack, in terms of level, was not inferior to the Red Lotus karmic fire. The wound caused by it could not be healed in the Douluo world, even if it was a healing type titled Dalu. Well, Wang Feng didn't know if he could save him, because Wang Feng didn't seem to have seen a healing type titled Dalu. Hearing this, everyone fell silent. He can only live for a day at most. Seeing that they were silent, Wang Feng continued. Hearing this, everyone's hearts trembled. Get out, Teacher Tian said in a low voice. After saying that, Teacher Tian led the rest of the team out directly. He actually had reason to believe that 9-to-1 opening could save Zhang Xiaotian. After all, the wound was caused by him, and he definitely had a way to heal Zhang Xiaotian. In addition, he had no enmity with Zhang Xiaotian, so there was no need to kill him. Most importantly, they really had no other way. In fact, it was just as he thought. Wang Feng really didn't want to kill Zhang Xiaotian. They had no enmity, and Wang Feng even thought highly of his martial soul. This Zhan Meng beast martial soul was not inferior to those powerful martial souls, and was even stronger. In the original book, Wang Feng had never seen such a martial soul, so he was curious about what it would become in the future. After dispersing everyone, Wang Feng used the Golden Lotus to heal Zhang Xiaotian perfectly. With Zhang Xiaotian's delirious state, he couldn't even open his eyes, so he couldn't see anything. The Golden Lotus in his palm spun slightly, and a golden energy landed directly on the wound on Zhang Xiaotian's arm. The wound quickly healed, and Wang Feng withdrew the Golden Lotus. It was very fast, and it only took 2 to 3 seconds. Once the wound was healed, Zhang Xiaotian opened his eyes abruptly, and looked at Zhou Yikai with a complicated expression. Thank you for saving my life. Zhang Xiaotian's voice was slightly low and hoarse. Although the wound was caused by his opponent, no one could be blamed for any injury in the competition. If he wanted to blame someone, he could only blame himself for being weak. Wang Feng shook his head and didn't answer. He directly disappeared into the night. After a while, Teacher Tian walked in with a few team members. Xiaotian, how is it, are you okay? When Teacher Tian walked in, he saw that Zhang Xiaotian had completely woken up, and he couldn't help but be stunned. I'm fine. Zhang Xiaotian smiled and touched the wound, feeling a little magical. The pain of the wound seemed to have hit his soul, and no treatment was effective. Although his consciousness was very blurry, Zhang Xiaotian knew that even the rank 76 soul sage from the Martial Spirit Hall couldn't heal him. This Jiuikai is really not simple. Zhang Xiaotian sighed. I didn't expect such a strong person to exist at such a young age. What I admire more is that he saved me. How did he do it? Teacher Tian was silent for a moment and asked. I don't know. Zhang Xiaotian shook his head and said, I only felt some warmth in my arm, and then the wound was healed. Maybe it's the ability of his spear, which can cause wounds and also heal wounds. Oh right, teacher, I'll pretend that I'm still not well tomorrow and leave the Martial Spirit City directly. Otherwise, the people from the Martial Spirit Hall will be suspicious. Zhang Xiaotian's martial soul was a strength type, but he was very smart, or he wouldn't be the team leader. Okay. End of chapter. Chapter 421. The next day. The second round began. In this round, Purple Star College, as the first place of the Heaven Do Empire, had a bye, so Wang Feng went to watch Tang San's match. However, when Wang Feng arrived at the Shrek Academy's resting area, he found that the group was silent. "Master, what kind of opponent did they meet?" Wang Feng asked curiously. "It's the seeded team from the Douluo Imperial College." The master shook his head. "They're also a strong opponent, but they're on par with Ares College." Hearing this, Wang Feng suddenly understood. The seeded team from the Douluo Imperial College had a bye in the first round. They didn't expect to meet Tang San's team in the second round. If he remembered correctly, this college had something to do with Dai Mubai and Zhu Zhuqing. "Brother Feng, are you here to watch the match today?" Tang San looked at Wang Feng and smiled. "I didn't expect to meet a strong opponent today. However, I did some research and found that the Douluo Imperial College's team is actually weaker than Ares College's team yesterday. It's a pity that you didn't watch the match yesterday, but our chances of winning aren't low." However, although he said so, the others seemed to be abnormally silent. "That's good." Wang Feng nodded slightly and suddenly looked at Dai Mubai and Zhu Zhuqing. He said slowly, "Is there something wrong?" Everyone looked at the two of them. When Dean Frank came to tell them about the draw, they had already noticed something strange about the two of them. "Yes." Seeing Wang Feng, Zhu Zhuqing's expression seemed much better. She nodded slightly and stood up. She looked at Dai Mubai and said, "Do you want to speak or should I?" Dai Mubai, who was in low spirits, stood up reluctantly, but he was silent. At this moment, a short-haired girl in sky-blue clothes walked into the resting area. She smiled and said, "Xiao Bai, I heard that you have a match today. Good luck." This girl was Shui Yuer. Seeing this girl, everyone was stunned. "What's wrong with you? I'm here to cheer for you." Shui Yuer looked at everyone in surprise. Sky Water Academy's luck today was good. They had finished their matches and their opponents were very weak. This meant that they would be able to enter the third round, but it would be difficult then. Fortunately, her goal was to enter the third round. Wang Feng knew this because Shui Bing would occasionally come to talk to him, mainly about the situation of Yaya's consciousness. Therefore, Sky Water Academy was very relaxed. Indeed, this girl was a little different. She was very smart and knew what level they were at, so she didn't force them. Entering the third round of the finals was already Sky Water Academy's best result. Seeing Shui Yuer walking over, Dai Mubai's complexion also improved a lot. The relationship between the two had quickly warmed up after the qualifiers, and after the promotion, they were even more inseparable. On the way here, Dai Mubai often went to Sky Water Academy's carriage to look for Shui Yuer. "I'll tell you." Zhu Zhuqing's tone was very calm. "This match concerns our lives. If we lose, Mubai and I will probably end up very badly." Hearing this, everyone was stunned. "Zhu Qing, what's the matter?" Tang San asked. Zhu Zhuqing glanced at Dai Mubai and continued. "He and I are both from the Douluo Empire. We are both the legitimate sons of the Douluo Empire's clans. According to the rules of our clans, my sister and his brother are engaged. I'm also engaged to him. This is a custom that has been passed down since ancient times." Although everyone had vaguely guessed the relationship between the two, they didn't expect it to be like this. For a moment, they were all stunned. Wang Feng nodded slightly. He had always known about this, but the current situation wasn't like the original story. My sister and his brother are both very talented soul masters in the clan. There has always been a struggle for the position of the clan's successor, but my chances are very small because I'm not strong enough. This tournament is a chance. If we can beat them, we'll have a chance to inherit the clan. At this point, Zhu Zhuqing's expression changed slightly. My sister and his brother are in the Imperial Douluo Academy, so they're our opponents in this round. Zhu Zhuqing continued. Yu Qing and I don't want to inherit the clan's position. Dai Mubai spoke up, but there was a hint of bitterness on his face. I'm not interested. Zhu Qing is the same. It's just that we have to fight for it. If we lose, the best outcome for us is to become cripples and be imprisoned for life. I don't like power. I'm not interested in it. Wang Feng, why does this sound so familiar? Wang Feng looked at Dai Mubai. Dai Mubai didn't like power, but he had to fight for it. However, this kind of family struggle wasn't much. In his previous world, there were many melodramatic court dramas that were more complicated than this. Moreover, a successor raised in this way would be much more outstanding in this kind of environment. So, we have to fight for it. Otherwise, we'll lose our lives. Zhu Zhuqing's voice was cold, but there was a hint of decisiveness in it. After hearing this, everyone more or less understood. No wonder you were so mean to Mubai when you first came to the academy. Xiao Wu was deep in thought. Back then, Dai Mubai had been indulging in debauchery and debauchery. How could he fight for it? If she was his fiancée, her attitude might have been even worse. My older brother and sister are both more talented than us. Dai Mubai smiled bitterly. There's no way we can win. If that had been the case, I would be even more depressed now. Fortunately, I met you too, which reignited my confidence. I also met her. At this point, Dai Mubai glanced at Shui Yuer. What about your engagement? Shui Yuer looked at the two of them. Zhu Zhuqing and Dai Mubai shook their heads in unison. The engagement isn't important, Dai Mubai said in a low voice. As long as we can defeat my older brother and sister, we'll be able to survive. The engagement doesn't matter. When the time comes, our families will unite. As long as I'm related to Zhuqing, it'll be fine. Besides, although we were engaged when we were young. At this moment, Zhu Zhuqing said softly, I don't have feelings for you. But I don't have any feelings. I was angry because I didn't want the two of us to die in vain. Dai Mubai nodded. A special aura suddenly erupted from his body. That's right. Most importantly, I have someone I like now. I won't admit defeat in this competition. After saying that, Dai Mubai glanced at Shui Yuer. Hearing this, Shui Yuer was very satisfied. She blushed and nodded. She didn't care which empire Dai Mubai was from. Me too. I won't admit defeat in this competition. Zhu Zhuqing's voice became lower and lower. In the end, she muttered, I also have someone I like. Her last sentence was so soft that it was almost inaudible. No one heard it. However, Zhu Zhuqing secretly glanced at Wang Feng. While I'm at it, I'll ask for some votes. End of chapter. Chapter 422. The incident between Dai Mubai and Zhu Zhuqing made everyone take today's competition even more seriously. It also gave them one more reason to win. Today was also the first time that Shrek's 7 monsters were all on stage. In order to prevent any accidents, Wang Feng secretly increased Zhu Zhuqing's soul power by 4 ranks. Although Wang Feng knew that Shrek's 7 monsters had won in the original novel, who knew if the Imperial Star Luo Academy's team would change as well? Ares College was a good example. This team had the ability to fight for the championship. But thinking of this, Wang Feng suspected that the Martial Spirit Hall had purposely arranged the first round. After all, the Martial Spirit Hall must have known about the 15 teams from the 2 empires. Thus, they could eliminate all the teams that posed a threat in the 5th round. Ares College and himself were a good example. No matter who lost, it would be beneficial to the Martial Spirit Hall. Soon, as everyone stepped onto the stage, many students turned to look at the 2 competitors. Wang Feng also saw the Imperial Star Luo Academy's team. The man in the lead resembled Dai Mubai. He had a full head of golden hair and a tall and sturdy body. He had the aura of a superior. Clearly, he was Dai Mubai's older brother Davis. He was also the successor of his family. Beside him stood Zhu Zhuqing's older sister, Zhu Zhuqing. Her appearance and figure were similar to Zhu Zhuqing's, but her aura was softer and more beautiful. She just lacked the cold elegance of Zhu Zhuqing. The 2 teams faced each other in a row. They seemed to be in the middle of an exchange. Wang Feng could vaguely hear their conversation. At this time, Wang Feng also saw the Imperial Star Luo Academy's information. After seeing it, Wang Feng let out a sigh of relief. The reason was simple. Although the Imperial Star Luo Academy team's information had changed, it was only in terms of soul power. There were no other changes. Although Zhu Zhuqing and Dai Mubai don't have a soul fusion skill, with Zhuqing's current strength and the soul power boost I gave her, it shouldn't be a problem to deal with them. Wang Feng thought. The truth was just as Wang Feng had predicted. The Imperial Star Luo Academy team was actually slightly weaker than Ares College. The only strong point was Davis and Zhu Zhiyun's martial soul fusion skill, which was slightly stronger. However, with Zhang Xiaotian's strength, he might be able to withstand the attack if he were to add on two extreme states. At this moment, on the stage, Wang Feng saw that Zhu Zhuqing's expression had turned ugly, and Dai Mubai's expression wasn't any better. It was obvious that both sides were angry after their discussion. Wang Feng heard some of it. To put it simply, Zhu Zhuqing's family was very cruel. If Zhu Zhuqing hadn't come to the Heaven Dou Empire, she would have been killed by Zhu Zhuqing a long time ago. It was no wonder that Zhu Zhuqing had developed such a quiet personality. If a normal person were to live in that kind of family environment, not many would be able to bear it. Speaking of which, he was rather pitiful. Wang Feng could even see the sneers and disdain in Davis and Zhu Zhiyun's eyes. Their soul power ranks were the highest among them. Zhu Zhiyun was rank 46, and Davis was even higher at rank 48. However, they were also very old. The rest of the team members were also above rank 41. However, when the people on Tang San's side lit up with their soul power, the smiles on Davis and Zhu Zhiyun's faces disappeared at a speed visible to the naked eye. This was because Dai Mubai and Zhu Zhuqing's soul power ranks were too exaggerated, especially Zhu Zhuqing. What shocked them the most was not only their soul power, but also their martial souls. Dai Mubai's white tiger was more domineering than Davis's white tiger. It looked like an authentic product and a knockoff. Their appearances were similar, but their auras were completely different. Especially Dai Mubai's white tiger, with the Golden King character on its forehead. Davis was speechless at the sight of it. In comparison, Zhu Zhuqing's Nethermoon fairy was even more shocking. The mysterious crescent moon symbol, the elegant and noble figure, and the golden pupils of the netherworld civet, which was staring at Zhu Zhiyun, were like a real dragon overlooking an earthworm. It wasn't that the netherworld civet was bad, but that the quality of this Nethermoon fairy had completely surpassed the netherworld civet's martial soul. Martial soul mutation. How can you have a martial soul mutation? Zhu Zhiyun's sharp voice was filled with disbelief. In just 2 years, his soul power rank was not inferior to hers. It even surpassed hers. On the way here, Zhu Zhuqing was rank 42. After the chrysanthemum Douluo's suppression and forcing out the medicinal effects in their bodies, the 7 monsters, except for Xiao Wu, all rose by 1 rank to rank 43. After Wang Feng's soul power increased, they were now at rank 47. It was 1 rank higher than Dai Mubai's. Zhu Zhiyun couldn't accept that his martial soul had mutated due to his soul power surpassing hers. Their family didn't have anyone with a mutated martial soul. Furthermore, Zhu Zhuqing's martial soul had mutated in a good direction. This was because Zhu Zhiyun could feel it clearly from the aura. It was suppression. Zhu Zhuqing's mutated martial soul had the effect of suppressing her netherworld civet. She must have become stronger. Although Dai Mubai's martial soul didn't mutate, its quality had increased. This was also difficult for Davis to accept. No one would feel good about the feeling of being an imposter for no reason. Originally, he had been nurtured by his family for a long time, and his superior aura was enough to suppress Dai Mubai. However, Dai Mubai's martial spirit had reduced his aura. However, Zhu Zhiyun seems to have a soul bone. Wang Feng frowned slightly as he looked at Zhu Zhuqing's calf. Wang Feng could sense a special energy undulation from her calf. However, Wang Feng wasn't worried even if she had a leg bone. With the current strength of the Shrek's 7 monsters, it wouldn't be difficult to defeat them. As the referee announced the start of the match, the battle had begun. Although they were shocked, it was impossible for them to lose their will to fight so easily. This match was a battle of life and death. No matter what, they wouldn't admit defeat. Unfortunately, the strength of the Shrek's 7 monsters exceeded their expectations. She controlled Ning Rongrong, who had reached the 4 apertures realm, to give the 4 of them different amplifications at the same time. Her current amplification was no ordinary amplification. A 73% amplification was very terrifying. Although it wasn't as abnormal as the Golden Wish Tree's amplification, it was different. She could give the 4 of them different amplifications at the same time, causing everyone's strength to increase tremendously. Because Zhu Zhuyun had a leg bone, her speed was the fastest among them. End of chapter. Chapter 423. However, she still couldn't compare to Zhu Zhuqing. Even without Ning Rongrong's enhancement, her speed was still faster than Zhu Zhuyun, who had a soul bone. This was the difference brought about by a mutated martial soul. Of course, there was also a difference in soul power. Therefore, Zhu Zhuqing didn't have any advantage against Zhu Zhuqing. She was at a disadvantage almost immediately. Davis wanted to teach Dai Mubai a lesson, but he didn't succeed. He was held back by Dai Mubai and Xiao Wu. Although Xiao Wu's soul power was only at rank 41, her 4th soul skill was very strong. It was the effect of Golden Body, which made her invincible for 3 seconds. She wouldn't be hurt at all. Logically speaking, this skill was a little exaggerated. It was like Central Asia's hourglass. Theoretically, it could make her immune to all kinds of damage, including attacks from titled Douluo. Wang Feng didn't know if Xiao Wu's 4th soul skill could make her immune to the God-slaying Spear's attack or the Red Lotus Karmic Fire's attack. However, it was a little exaggerated for her to be immune to a titled Douluo's attack. This meant that Xiao Wu could resist a titled Douluo's attack for at least 3 seconds. In this way, Wang Feng felt that it wasn't very impressive for him to be able to resist a few attacks from a titled Douluo. A normal titled Douluo could attack many times in 3 seconds. For example, a Gue Douluo could attack many times in a second. Therefore, Davis was at a disadvantage against such a soul skill. He was thrown into the air by Dai Mubai, and was hit by Xiao Wu's 8 segments throw. At this moment, Tang San, who had been enhanced by his soul power and eaten the pink sausage, started his performance. He had modified the blue-silver prison ring into the blue-silver stab. He thrust the blue-silver prison ring into the air to stun everyone except Zhu Zhuyun and Davis for a short while before converging them together. After that, he used Ma Hongjuan's Phoenix Sky Whistle to deal fatal damage. At this moment, he coordinated with Dai Mubai's White Tiger Meteor Shower to deal a fatal blow, causing the remaining people to lose their ability to fight. Wang Feng had tried such an explosive soul skill in the Setting Sun Forest, but he didn't want to take it head-on. Not to mention these people. A series of screams rang out. Fortunately, Davis and Zhu Zhuyun reacted in time. The 2 of them, riddled with wounds, retreated to the back, intending to use their martial soul fusion skill, Netherworld White Tiger. As long as they unleashed their martial soul fusion skills, they would still be able to put up a fight. His opponent must have expended a lot of energy to unleash such an explosive soul skill. Unfortunately, Tang San and the others had already predicted that the other party would use a martial soul fusion skill, so they naturally wouldn't let the other party use it. The cobweb binding that had been prepared earlier wrapped around Davis's body. On the other hand, Zhu Zhuqing used her terrifying speed to entangle Zhu Zhuyun once again, preventing the 2 of them from using their martial soul fusion skill. When they were chatting earlier, Dai Mubai and Zhu Zhuqing had mentioned that they had to defend against the other party's martial soul fusion skill, which was why they had made preparations in advance. Under such circumstances, the two of them could only admit defeat. There was some suspense in the match, but it did not exceed Wang Feng's expectations. In the end, the Shrek team won. In fact, from the moment he sensed the Imperial Star Luo team, Wang Feng had already predicted the outcome. After winning the match, Dai Mubai let out an excited roar on the stage. He, who had been depressed for many years, could finally hold his head high at this moment. On the other side, Zhu Zhuqing's face was incomparably red, as if she was very excited. Her gaze fell from the stage to Wang Feng below the stage. There was gratitude, excitement, and also a group of people walked off the stage. In this match, they had relied on the performance of Ning Rongrong and Oscar, the tactics they had prepared beforehand, and the huge increase in the strength of the seven of them. It could be said that they had completely defeated their opponents. Of course, the other party had underestimated their opponents, but it was more because of their own strength. If not for the fact that Zhu Zhuqing was able to restrain and even suppress Zhu Zhuyun by herself, they would have been able to do so. If the two of them had unleashed their martial soul fusion skills in advance, the victory wouldn't have been so easy. As they walked off the stage, the seven of them felt as if they were floating. To be able to achieve this kind of victory was a great victory for the Shrek's seven monsters. You all performed well. The Grandmaster nodded slightly, looking at the children with a gratified expression. The strength of the Royal Star Luo battle team was actually much stronger than he had imagined. Although they were inferior to Ares College as a whole in the finals, they were still a first-class team. Just now, Zhu Qing's soul power increased again, right? Tang San suddenly asked. It was the same as during the advancement match. Was it really your hidden strength? Everyone suddenly looked at Zhu Zhuqing. Previously, during the advancement match, Zhu Zhuqing had unleashed an extraordinary soul power level and defeated Bao Yi from the Cruel Blood battle team. At that time, she had explained that she was hiding her strength, but it was obviously a little exaggerated, because even if she was hiding her strength, it was impossible to hide such a huge soul power level. Even with Ning Rongrong's soul power amplification, it was still impossible to directly increase a person's soul power level. It was the Golden Wish Tree's extreme amplification that had used the fusion ring technique to increase Zhan Xiaotian's soul power level, causing Zhan Xiaotian's strength to increase. And Zhu Zhuqing nodded slightly. At this time, her eyes didn't wander. It's a special way to increase soul power. Zhu Zhuqing looked at the sky and whispered, it should be related to my Yue spirit. It can store soul power and then explode it when needed. This explanation was still acceptable. However, it seemed that because she was lying, Zhu Zhuqing's face was slightly red. But no one doubted it. As the competition ended, many teams left to rest. Defeating the Royal Star Luo battle team made them very excited, but they didn't let down their guard. Although they could rest tomorrow, they still needed to come to the competition venue to watch the other team's matches and make preparations in advance. But coincidentally, they met the Godwind Academy. At this time, the Godwind Academy was a combination of the Blazing Academy and the Godwind Academy. Leading the group were Fire Dance and Feng Xiaotian. The combination of the two academies was abnormally strong. They crushed their opponents in every match and didn't reveal too much. They were also very lucky that they didn't meet a strong team. In the two matches yesterday and today, they didn't even use Fire Dance's resistance ring of fire. With the combination of Fire Dance and Feng Xiaotian, they were able to defeat their opponent. Now, they were also a popular team to win the championship. Seeing the Godwind Academy, the faces of Tang San and the others changed. You will have a bye tomorrow. We will meet you, but we will eliminate you. Fire Dance looked at the group of people. Her delicate face was very calm, but her eyes were burning with flames, showing how strong her competitive heart was. Tang San and the others didn't say anything. They didn't know how this newly formed team would perform. End of chapter. Chapter 424. Not only that, if we meet 9-1, we will definitely eliminate him. Fire Dance said resolutely. This time, he won't have the same chance as last time. For saying those words, Fire Dance left directly. Feng Xiaotian gave Tang San and the others a friendly smile. But he didn't say anything and left directly. Wang Feng looked at the group of people thoughtfully. The idea of the team combination obviously came from Fire Dance. As a bootlicker, Feng Xiaotian naturally wouldn't have any objection. In fact, he was eager to do so. Fire Dance was too competitive. She didn't want to lose to others in anything. In the qualifiers and the promotion round, she was beaten too badly. Especially in the promotion round, she used her trump card and defeated 9-1 in such a way. How could she not be reconciled? But with the combination of wind and fire, Wang Feng had a rough guess. But what kind of changes would there be? He would know if he had the chance to meet them. Today, Wang Feng didn't see the face of the Golden Generation because the Martial Spirit Palace didn't send 3 people to participate. Instead, they sent 3 substitutes and the remaining 4 people. Obviously, the Martial Spirit Palace was hiding their strength for the 3 Golden Generation. At night. This night seemed to be particularly restless. Wang Feng and Tang San were talking about tomorrow's match. Brother Feng, that Divine Wind team, what do you think? Tang San thought for a moment. The combination of these two gives me a special feeling. I'm afraid it will be very difficult to defeat them. Wang Feng nodded with a smile. Since Fire Dance dared to say such words, she obviously had some preparation. Actually, Divine Wind team, but it's just a worry. Wang Feng said slowly, maybe they will meet 9-1 tomorrow? What if they don't meet in the 4th round tomorrow? Tomorrow was the 3rd round. Once the 3rd round was over, the top 6 would be decided. Once the 4th round was over, the top 3 would be decided. At that time, it would be the championship competition. It makes sense. Tang San also smiled. They may not necessarily meet an alchemist. Don't worry, they will definitely meet. Wang Feng's eyes flashed. Judging from these 2 matches, the Martial Spirit Palace obviously wanted to eliminate these strong teams as soon as possible. If Wang Feng's prediction was correct, even if he didn't meet the Imperial Battle Team tomorrow, he would definitely meet the other seeded team from the Shrek Academy and the Heaven Do Empire in the 4th round. This was inevitable. The Martial Spirit Palace would definitely arrange it. Drawing lots was just a formality. That's right, Big Brother Feng, you should have guessed Boss Dai's identity, right? Tang San asked. His and Zhuqing's families are not ordinary families. According to my guess, Boss Dai should be related to the Star Luo Empire's royal family. He should be a prince or something. Otherwise, this kind of cruel family struggle is not something that ordinary families would have. Wang Feng laughed out loud. At this moment there was a knock on the door. Wang Feng sat down and opened the door. It was Zhu Qing and Dai Mubai. Xiao San, your guess is right. Dai Mubai walked in with a smile on his face. I heard it from outside. I am indeed a prince of the Star Luo Empire. There is nothing to hide. Winning today's match means that I have a chance to compete with Big Brother for the throne. I'm here to thank you. Zhu Zhuqing walked in. Although she didn't say anything, her eyes fell on Wang Feng. The significance of this victory was too great for the 2 of them. Tang San nodded slightly. The Star Luo Empire's royal family struggles may be much crueler than you think. Dai Mubai sighed softly. Once you lose, it will be difficult to even keep your life. But because of this, the Star Luo Empire is actually much stronger than the Heaven Do Empire. It's only because the Martial Spirit Palace has been circling around in the middle that the 2 empires and the Martial Spirit Palace can stand side by side. Wang Feng laughed inwardly when he heard this. Dai Mubai wants to recruit them now? Am I going to have a big fight? Other than thanking you, I'm here tonight to thank you. Actually, I still have something I want to say. Just as Wang Feng expected, Dai Mubai said in a low voice, your current strength has already attracted the attention of the Martial Soul Palace. After the competition, they will definitely not let the captain and little three off so easily. Therefore, I want to invite the two of you to join the Star Luo Empire. However, if I can ascend to the throne, I will naturally be able to protect the two of you. And with the Star Luo Empire's resources, you will definitely not be lacking. Actually, Dai Mubai's words were sincere. But in reality, Wang Feng felt that his thinking was a little too simple. Even if Dai Mubai ascended to the throne, the various powers in the empire would be at odds with each other, and it wouldn't be easy to make the entire Star Luo Empire listen to him. Tang San and Wang Feng looked at each other and smiled. With Tang San's personality, it was obviously impossible to keep him in the same empire. It could only be said that they were on good terms. Because he had his own ideals, it was impossible for Wang Feng. Big Brother Feng and I may not be able to promise you. Tang San shook his head. Our personalities are not suitable to rely on a certain power. But you are the leader of the 7 monsters. If you encounter any problems in the future, Big Brother Feng and I will help you. Tang San wanted to establish the Tang sect. How could he rely on a power and submit to others? Hearing this, Dai Mubai did not seem surprised. Instead, he smiled and said, that's fine. I won't force you. By the way, Zhu Qing still has something to say to Wang Feng. Actually, Dai Mubai did not want the two of them to join the Star Luo Empire. After being together for so long, he was not a blockhead. How could he not understand their personalities? Tang San's promise was what he really wanted. Oh, Tang San was stunned. He glanced at Zhu Qing, stood up, and walked out of the room with Dai Mubai. Only Wang Feng and Zhu Qing were left in the room. For a moment, the room was silent. Suddenly, Zhu Qing ran toward Wang Feng. When she was only a few centimeters away from Wang Feng, Zhu Qing's face turned red. She stopped and said softly, Wang Feng, thank you. Wang Feng subconsciously took 2 steps back. Hearing this, he sighed in relief. He was a little afraid that she would pounce on him. But fortunately, with Zhu Qing's shy and passive personality, she would not do such a thing. You're welcome. Wang Feng smiled. Actually, you obtained all of this through your own efforts. Otherwise, no matter how much others helped you, you would not have won today's victory. Okay. Zhu Qing lowered her head and continued in a low voice. Do you remember that I said I have something to tell you after the competition? Wang Feng nodded. After the competition, I have to go back to my family. Actually, I don't want to go back. Zhu Qing muttered. That place is cold and heartless. There is no trace of life. It's like an ice cave. Even the air is cold. End of chapter. Chapter 425. Then don't go back. Wang Feng looked at Zhu Qing, thought for a while, and put his hands on Zhu Qing's shoulders. But, there are some things that you have to face sooner or later. What he meant was that he would support her no matter what she wanted to do, but she had to think clearly. There were some things that couldn't be avoided. Zhu Qing's delicate body trembled. She raised her head and looked at Wang Feng, her eyes were a bit misty. You're not alone now. Wang Feng said with a smile. You have 7 companions. Zhu Qing was stunned. She nodded heavily and gently wiped the tears in her eyes. Then she clenched her hands tightly, as if she was struggling with something. She suddenly wrapped her arms around Wang Feng's neck, stood on tiptoe, and leaned her head on Wang Feng's shoulder, whispering softly, Don't forget, after the competition, I have something to tell you. Less than a second after she finished speaking, Zhu Qing quickly let go of her hands, softly moaned, turned around, and ran out of the room. When Wang Feng came back to his senses, he was still a bit confused. To be honest, it was too fast. He didn't feel anything, and Zhu Zhuqing disappeared with a burst of fragrance. I was taken advantage of, right? Wang Feng was stunned and speechless. The third day. The third round of the competition began. On this day, Tang San's team didn't have a bye, but they still came to the competition area to watch the competition. After the lot was drawn, Tang San was slightly stunned. Just like what Wang Feng said last night. It seemed that they really met in the competition. Purple Star College was up against Divine Wine Team again. Martial Spirit Palace was up against another seeded team, Imperial Battle Team. Both of them were heavyweight matches. Because after today, the competition was about to reach its climax. The quality of the finals was very high. There was no other way the losing team would be eliminated. At this time, the number of teams on the third day was reduced by more than half. Because the losing team directly withdrew from the competition, they weren't even allowed to stay to watch the competition. This was extremely inhumane. It was obviously such a high-level competition, but they hid it. Only Martial Spirit Palace knew what they were planning. Divine Wind Team, Wang Feng shook his head and said in a low voice, "I wonder what you can take out today." The competition wasn't slow. The first few matches had already been completed, and it would soon be his turn. Wang Feng also saw the Sky Water Battle Team. Shui Bing Er's luck was not bad. This time, their opponents were no match for them. The extreme ice and snow environment, coupled with Shui Bing Er's 10,000-year soul ring, had allowed them to make it this far. Judging from the situation, they could still enter the top 6. However, in the fourth round, she would definitely encounter him, Tang San or the remaining strong teams. It would be difficult to enter the championship. After Sky Water Academy won, the 7 girls were a little excited. Shui Yu directly ran to Shrek Academy to find Dai Mubai. She couldn't wait to share her joy with the person she liked. Water Ice also walked over to Purple Star College's side and thanked them profusely. Because of Yi, Wang Feng couldn't keep too far away from her. Otherwise, if something happened to Yi's remnant consciousness, he wouldn't be able to save her in time. 9-1. Your next match is against the Divine Wind Battle Team. Be careful. Shui Bing cautiously reminded, "You've broken their strategy twice in a row. Since Huwu wants to team up with the Divine Wind Battle Team, she must have thought of a way to deal with you." Wang Feng nodded slightly and walked up to the stage. It was already his turn. The remaining teams all turned their attention back to the stage, waiting for the next match to begin. On the stage, Wang Feng saw the Divine Wind Battle Team. 7 people. Feng Xiaotian, 2 Cirrus Bird Soul Masters, Huwu Shuang, Huwu, and 2 Flamingo Crane Soul Masters. They looked very weak. Because only Feng Xiaotian, Huwu Shuang, and Huwu were above rank 41. Compared to the remaining strong teams, most of the teams had more than 4 Soul Elders. It could be said that their allocation was very low. It had been less than a month since the promotion round. They didn't have any fortuitous encounters, so naturally, they didn't improve. However, they were able to reach this step. Clearly, the 2 of them could form a team full of soul ancestors, but they didn't. 9-1 Open. You have twin martial souls and are indeed very strong. But today, we won't give you the same chance. Huwu looked at 9-1 Open with flames dancing in her eyes. People could change. It was obviously impossible to use the same move to deal with them. Let's wait and see. Wang Feng's hoarse voice still didn't fluctuate. At this moment, the referee gave the order. The match began. In an instant, the 7 martial souls suddenly bloomed. Without any hesitation, Feng Xiaotian had a pair of wings on his back. He grabbed Huwu's shoulders with both hands and directly swept into the air. At the same time, the 2 Cirrus Bird Soul Masters directly grabbed Huwu Shuang's shoulders and flew into the air. The other 2 Flamingo Crane Soul Masters did the same. When the match began, they directly flew into the air. Compared to the previous 2 matches, this time, their team members and tactics seemed to have completely changed. In the previous two matches, they relied on Feng Xiaotian, Huowu Shuang, Huowu, and two auxiliary-type soul masters to directly crush the opponent from the ground and the sky. But this time, it was completely different. Fire cloud, fire rain. Huowu shouted at the two flamingo crane soul masters. Then, the two cirrus bird soul masters brought Huowu Shuang directly in front of Huowu. Upon receiving the order, the two flamingo crane soul masters directly spat out huge fire pillars in the air towards Wang Feng. But the fire pillars that sprayed down from the air couldn't hurt Wang Feng. However, these flames landed on the arena and continued to burn. Obviously, they wanted to create the effect of the fiery hell. Wang Feng frowned slightly. The Blazing Academy's fiery hell was a special environment that required two auxiliary-type soul masters from Mars to achieve. But the opponent didn't have two auxiliary-type soul masters. Moreover, the same method was ineffective against him. He could easily walk out of the fiery hell with the help of the mysterious underworld spike. They shouldn't be so stupid. And without two auxiliary-type soul masters, Huowu couldn't even use her most powerful fire dance of the Brilliant Sun. Fire Dance of the Brilliant Sun required at least 4 fire-type soul masters of the same element to use. While dodging the flames, Wang Feng raised his head to look at the group of people in the air, and was slightly stunned. He saw the 6 people in the air, with Huowu as the leader. The 6 of them formed a sharp cone formation and poured their soul power into Huowu's body. Fusion skill? Wang Feng's eyes lit up as he seemed to have seen some clues. In the air, a scorching ball of light condensed in Huowu's palm. It was the fire dance of the Brilliant Sun soul skill. But there was a big difference. On the surface of this ball of light, there was a high degree of heat in the center, but there were countless green hurricanes rapidly forming outside. Wind Dance of the Brilliant Sun. Huowu slowly said the name of this soul skill. Yes, that's right. This was a soul skill that combined 2 elements and had undergone mutation and improvement. Wind Dance of the Brilliant Sun. The 2 cirrus bird soul masters and Feng Xiaotian, plus herself and Huowu Shuang. End of chapter. Chapter 426. Soul skills could be improved. Tang San could be improved, Wang Feng could be improved, everyone could be improved. Naturally, the opponent could be improved too. However, improving a soul skill was not easy. In order to win against 911 and Shrek Academy, Huowu had racked her brains. For this reason, she had experimented with the 7 members of the Divine Wind team many times before she succeeded and used it as a trump card. Because the improvement of a soul skill was the fusion of 2 different types of soul power, a slight mistake could lead to many problems. For example, if the soul power of both parties was not balanced, it would cause the soul skill to go berserk and be difficult to control. Or if the soul power attribute was not compatible, there were many reasons. On the way here, Huowu had been trying to fuse and improve with the 7 members of the Divine Wind team. She had tried every single one of the 7 team members. In the end, she found that she, Huowu Shuang, the 2 cirrus bird soul masters, and Feng Xiaotian had a perfect balance. The soul power attributes of the 5 of them could reach a subtle balance, and their soul power attributes were also more compatible. In the end, they created the Wind Dance of the Brilliant Sun, and its use was not only to attack the enemy. At this moment, the 2 flamingo soul masters attacked Wang Feng continuously like 2 cannons, causing half of the stage to burn with raging flames. Of course, it was impossible to injure Wang Feng. Wang Feng dodged all of the attacks. Under such fierce attacks, the soul power of the 2 flamingo soul masters was rapidly decreasing. Until Huowu threw the light green fireball in her hand down. Fire Dance didn't throw it at Wang Feng. Instead, she threw it at the center of the stage. Wang Feng frowned slightly as he looked at the green fireball. As the huge fireball fell, the flames on the stage burned even more exaggeratedly. As the saying goes, the wind helps the fire. Under such circumstances, perhaps, rumble. Immediately after, the green fireball exploded, turning into a rain of green fire. Hurricanes blew the entire stage. The temperature and momentum of the flames were extremely high. As the rain of fire fell, the flames that only burned half of the stage instantly spread to the entire stage. The entire stage turned into a fiery hell. There was no blind spot, and because of the hurricanes, the momentum of the flames increased rapidly. It was even more exaggerated than the fiery hell from before. The most terrifying thing was, the momentum of the flames was still increasing, and the temperature was still rising. Everyone was shocked when they saw this. Although they didn't have the two auxiliary-type Soul Masters, the Divine Wind battle team had formed an even more terrifying inferno. It filled the entire arena. For a moment, everyone looked at this scene with their mouths agape. This meant that Jyoikai had nowhere to run. There was no way to dodge it. What a good wind dance of the sun! Tang-san was shocked. In this situation, even if I use the blue-silver cage, I'm afraid I won't be able to do anything. Plus, the combination of the flames and the hurricane means that even flying will be difficult. If we want Oscar's mushroom intestines to fly into the air, the hurricane will blow us down easily. Unless you run down the arena and admit defeat. One could say that Fire Dance's attack covered the entire battlefield, leaving no blind spots for her opponents to escape. If we continue to resist inside, the temperature of the flames will continue to rise. Ma Hongjun chuckled. Among the 7 of us, I should be the only one who can resist it. But because of the hurricane, it will be difficult for me to dodge for a long time. Last time, Jyoikai used a special method to walk out of the fiery hell with his soul bone. Third brother used the blue-silver cage to bring us out of the fiery hell. I didn't expect that this time, the 2 battle teams would directly cover the entire arena with an even more powerful fiery hell, leaving us no chance at all. They were silent. Tang-san was also silent, as if he was thinking of a countermeasure. Fire Dance had changed a lot this time. The wind dance of the sun was not used to attack, but to improve the terrain. Although he had fire immunity and could temporarily protect the 7 of them from harm, they would only die if they continued to drag it out. If they flew, they would be easily burned by the flames and blown away by the hurricane. It could be said that they were completely restricted. Fire Dance changed her mind and didn't choose to attack blindly. At this moment, the 6 people in the air stared at Jyoikai. Be careful. When he fought against Skywater Academy, he used a bow and arrow. He can use the arrows to bring him into the air. Fire Dance was excited, but she was unusually calm. It was as if she could see that Jyoikai was about to lose. But in that situation, he can't control his body. It was effective the first time. Now we have to be prepared. If he dares to use this method and fly out, we will focus our attacks on him. He can't dodge in the air. There are hurricanes above the flames. Even if he uses his soul bone to stand up and walk, he can easily be blown away. Furthermore, he can't attack us. Clearly, Fire Dance had reviewed all of Jyoikai's previous battles in order to defeat him. She had memorized every special attack that he used. She was very well prepared. Even Wang Feng had to admit that Fire Dance had become smarter after being crushed twice in a row. Wang Feng looked at the flames around him. With the combination of wind and fire, he really didn't have a good way to dodge. Unfortunately, Fire Dance's calculations were always based on the strength he displayed. According to the strength that Jyoikai had displayed previously, he could only leave the stage in the face of such a terrifying blazing hell even if he had 3 heads and 6 arms. Otherwise, even his clothes would be burned away. If he used an arrow to fly out, he would be hit by his opponent's attack instantly. It would be difficult to dodge. At this moment, everyone's eyes were focused on Jyoikai. They wanted to know what he was going to do now. This was because today's situation was even more unsolvable than the first day when he met Ares College. Even if he used his second martial soul, it didn't seem to be of much use. No matter how strong his martial soul was, it couldn't let him out of the blazing hell now. But was this the case? Soul-slaying spear. Wang Feng clenched his fist, and the god-slaying spear appeared in his hand again. The black 10,000-year soul ring shone again. Seeing this, everyone frowned. They didn't know what Jiu Ikai was going to do now. But in the next moment they understood. Soul skill, soul-devouring blood wings. The ancient spear in Wang Feng's hand suddenly shone with bright light. The body of the spear was densely packed with ancient grooves. Streaks of blood-colored energy surged into the body of the spear, causing the pitch-black body of the spear to have an additional blood-red glow. Streaks of blood-colored aura surged from the body of the spear. Compared to the spear that wasn't very eye-catching before, the god-slaying spear seemed to have become even more dazzling. At this moment, the god-slaying spear seemed to have been consecrated. It attracted the eyes of countless people. Looking at it from afar, it gave people a terrifying feeling. Following this, a pair of blood-colored wings that were as thin as cicadas' wings suddenly appeared behind Wang Feng's back. In an instant, everyone's eyes widened when they saw this scene. I beg for a wave of monthly votes. There will be more at night. End of chapter. Chapter 427. Soul-devouring blood wings, the soul skill of the god-slaying spear. It could increase all attributes by 100% and increase attack power by 200%. It had the flying effect of blood wings, and its attacks had the special devouring effect. It could also attack from a distance. When Wang Feng used the god-slaying spear's soul skill and his deified soul skill, he could even injure Air Ming. However, Wang Feng did not intend to use the soul-devouring blood wings against Hu Wu and the others. He only wanted to use the flying effect of the blood wings. However, at that moment, many people were stunned when they saw Jiu Yi's wings spread out from his back. No one would have guessed that the soul skill of the spear martial soul had the effect of flying. Furthermore, when they saw the blood wings behind Jiu Yi, they knew that this soul ring was not simple. The blood-red wings shone brightly under the sunlight. Wang Feng put the god-slaying spear behind his back and condensed his palm. A huge hammer suddenly appeared in his other hand. The huge hammer was covered in a grayish-black light. It was formed by the mysterious underworld spike. Wang Feng spread his wings, and the blood-red light dispersed the surrounding flames. It was like a terrifying airwave when an airplane took off, and the burning flames were blown away. His figure flashed, and there was a sudden burst of air where he stood. Wang Feng directly rose into the air. The hurricane in the air had no effect on him, because the huge hammer was more than 10,000 kilograms. It was not something that could be blown away by the hurricane. If not for this, he would not be able to control it even if he really flew. The speed of the blood wings was several times faster than the butterfly wings formed by the Oscar mushroom intestines. This was the light wings of a 60,000-year blood-winged dragon beetle. How could it be so simple? Meanwhile, Fire Dance and the others were dumbfounded when they saw Wang Feng transform into a streak of black-red light and rise into the sky. They were not the only ones who were stunned. Everyone who was watching Jiu Ikai was stunned. They all looked at this scene in disbelief. How can he fly? Feng Xiaotian's lips trembled. All along, the battle tactics they thought of were based on the fact that Jiu Ikai could not fly. No one would have thought that 9-1 Open also had the ability to fly. This was the only shortcoming of 9-1 Open that many people thought. It was just that Jiu Ikai could use various methods to fly. After all, he was already so strong. If he could fly, how could he let others live? However, at this moment, countless pairs of eyes watched Jiu Ikai fly into the air, but they were completely speechless. This 9-1 opening is truly terrifying. At the front of the VIP seats, Ning Fengji gently swallowed a mouthful of water. All along, he has never shown any flying ability. Even when he was fighting against the Divine Wind battle team, He didn't have any flying ability at all. That's why he used all kinds of unconstrained methods to attack the enemy. Let everyone think that it's impossible for him to have the ability to fly. Let everyone think that this was his shortcoming so that they could use it to target him. In reality, this is just a trap that he deliberately left behind. Ning Fengji shook his head. For a person to be able to hide so deeply, it was too terrifying. This Divine Wind battle team was truly miserable. They had obviously fallen into a trap. Qian Rinxue did not say anything. She clenched her other hand tightly. She was now certain that the man was Feng Yuxiu. Back in the Great Star Do Forest, the Dream God Machine had mentioned that the person who had saved her the second time was someone who claimed to be Feng Yuxiu, who could fly. You should be stronger than when I first met you, Qian Rinxue muttered to herself. With your strength, it shouldn't be difficult for you to become the champion, but you must not release that dark angel martial soul. She knew Wang Feng's strength. Back then, with the suppression of the dark angel martial soul and that gun, even she, who was at rank 60, was suppressed. Not to mention the Divine Wind battle team. In fact, Qian Rinxue was not the only one who thought this way. When Zhou Yikai flew into the air, almost all the other academies felt a deep sense of powerlessness. How can we play this? Ma Hongjun could not help but blurt out. He has the ability to fly? He has never used it before. When he was fighting the Divine Wind battle team and the Heavenly Water battle team, he never used it. Who the hell knew that he had the ability to fly? Tang San also became more and more silent. In the original strategy to deal with Zhou Yikai, using Oscar's ability to fly was the one he was most confident in. He really did not expect Zhou Yikai to have the ability to fly. Previously, when facing many teams with the ability to fly, Zhou Yikai only used various kinds of Pegasus Starry Sky attacks to defeat the opponent, giving the enemy the illusion that he did not have the ability to fly at all. What a cunning guy! Flender shook his head. He has been hiding his ability to create an illusion for the enemy. If the enemy uses his inability to fly to target him, the situation will be reversed in an instant. Just like now. Suddenly, Flender exclaimed and looked at Huowu and the others in the air. At this moment, Feng Xiaotian and Huowu both shouted softly. I can't lose to you like this. Huowu's eyes flickered with flames. At this moment, even if she saw that Zhou Yikai could still fly, she did not give up. Because she still had one last move prepared. She originally planned to give Zhou Yikai a fatal blow, but she did not expect Zhou Yikai to be able to fly. Feng Xiaotian. Huowu's eyes were full of the desire for victory. Feng Xiaotian nodded solemnly. Then, the two Cirrus Bird Soul Masters directly transferred their soul power to him. Huowu Shuang transferred her soul power to Huowu. The soul power on their bodies surged violently, forming a stream of air that slowly mixed together. Then, their martial souls appeared on their bodies and suddenly pounced towards each other. It was as if two balls of light collided together. Seeing this, Wang Feng's eyes lit up again. Martial soul fusion skill? This really shocked him. He did not expect Huowu to be forced to try a martial soul fusion skill with Feng Xiaotian. One had to know that a martial soul fusion skill was not so simple. Not only did it require a high degree of compatibility between their martial souls, but they also needed to have a certain understanding of each other. As a bootlicker, Feng Xiaotian naturally understood Huowu. But with Huowu's character, it was impossible for her to understand Feng Xiaotian. In other words, this martial soul fusion skill was forcefully performed by Feng Xiaotian. At this moment, countless people were looking at the Divine Wind team in astonishment. They did not expect them to be so resilient and not give up. As for the reason, at the moment when the two of them collided, he suddenly understood. It was a martial soul fusion skill. This was the first time Wang Feng saw others use a martial soul fusion skill. He was previously used as a tool and was released several times. but he rarely saw others use it. Even Shui Bing in the Skywater Academy did not use it. Later, when Wang Feng asked Shui Bing she said that because of the mutation of her martial soul, she could not use the martial soul fusion skill for the time being. Wang Feng felt that it was a pity. End of this chapter. Chapter 428. He didn't expect to encounter a martial soul fusion skill from these two people. The victory of a bootlicker? Congratulations, Feng Xiaotian. Wang Fengxin chuckled. In the original novel, Fire Dance had fallen in love with Tang San. However, the current Fire Dance didn't fall in love with Tang San, nor did she fall in love with anyone. Instead, because she wanted to win, she accepted Feng Xiaotian and even formed a new martial soul fusion skill with him. As the two disappeared, a terrifying giant wolf suddenly appeared in mid-air. This giant wolf had 3 heads, and its entire body was burning with fierce red flames. There was also a pair of flame wings on its back, emitting an incomparably tyrannical aura. 3-headed hellhound? Wang Feng was stunned for a long time. The martial soul fusion skill of these two inexplicably reminded him of a mythical creature in his previous life. However, this was not a 3-headed hellhound. Martial soul fusion skill. Demonic flame 3-headed wolf. The martial soul fusion skill after the fusion of Feng Xiaotian and Fire Dance. The aura of this demonic flame 3-headed wolf had already surpassed the aura of a rank 50 soul master. 3 pairs of eyes stared at Wang Feng. Then, each of its heads opened its mouth and spat out a flame with a hurricane. It was like 3 pillars of fire attacking Jiu Yi. What a pity! Wang Feng shook his head slightly. It had to be said that the Divine Wind team had already reached their limit. Wang Feng never thought that the Divine Wind team could reach this step. He thought that when the other party used Wind Dance of the Brilliant Sun, it was already their last trump card. But he didn't expect that the other party actually had a martial soul fusion skill. Although this martial soul fusion skill is not bad, the two of you forcefully fused it. It can't last long and its power is not enough. It's still far from enough. Wang Feng shook his head lightly. Moreover, how can my third soul skill, soul-devouring blood wings, be so simple? To put it bluntly, his speed with the blood wings was even more exaggerated than on the ground. The 3 pillars of fire didn't even burn the corner of Wang Feng's clothes. Wang Feng leaped, the giant hammer in his hand flew, and smashed towards one of the wolf heads. Under the hammer, one of the heads of the demonic flame 3-headed wolf, which was completely formed from energy, was directly smashed into pieces by the giant hammer. Wang Feng didn't even plan to use the soul-slaying spear in his other hand. He even suppressed a portion of his strength. Otherwise, with his soul-devouring blood wings, he was afraid that he would smash this demonic flame 3-headed wolf to death. If that happened, Fire Dance and Feng Xiaotian would think that he was dead. Following that, Wang Feng swung his hammer twice, not giving the demonic flame 3-headed dragon any time to react, directly smashing it apart. Break for me! Wang Feng coldly snorted. His final hammer strike smashed into the demonic flame 3-headed dragon's body. The 10,000 gene hammer gently smashed down. Countless spikes appeared on the surface of the hammer. This was the mysterious underworld spike that could break through soul power. Every strike of his hammer wasn't that simple. The 4 hammers disintegrated the demonic flame 3-headed dragon. Roar! The demonic flame 3-headed dragon let out an unwilling roar and dissipated. In the end, it turned back into Feng Xiaotian and Huowu and fell down. Fortunately, the 2 flame crane soul masters below caught the 2 of them. The sea of fire below had already lost the support of soul power due to Feng Xiaotian and Huowu's martial soul fusion and disappeared. The remaining Huowushuang and the 2 weary cloud bird soul masters had also used up their soul power. Wind Dance of the Brilliant Sun, an improved soul skill that covered the entire arena, required a large amount of soul power. Then, Feng Xiaotian and Huowu had used up the last of their soul power to use their martial soul fusion skill. At this moment, they were barely able to fly to the ground. Wang Feng withdrew his soul-slaying spear, and the giant hammer turned into countless black lights and flew back to his body. As his feet gently landed on the still scorching hot stage, the curtains of this match finally came to an end. An incomparably exciting match. It could be said that the God Wind Academy had brought out all their skills. Even when 9-1 was in the air, they didn't give up. They even forcibly used their martial soul fusion skill. But they still couldn't defeat 9-1. It had to be said that when Huowu used Wind Dance of the Brilliant Sun, it shocked many people. An improved soul skill that fused two elements wasn't so easy to do. But the Divine Wind Academy did it. They used this move to cover the entire arena with blazing hell, turning it into a blazing hell. No academy dared to say that they wouldn't admit defeat in such an environment, even if they had the ability to fly. The effect of this killing move was very terrifying, but they didn't expect 9-1 to have the ability to fly. He wasn't affected by the hurricane and directly flew into the air. Tang San and the others knew. Because Tang San had analyzed that the soul bone in 9-1's body weighed at least a few thousand kilograms. With this weight, the hurricane above the flames couldn't blow him away. However, the opponent's blood wings could carry a weight of more than 10,000 kilograms and fly at such a speed, indicating that the soul beast of this soul ring should be very powerful. But the God Wind Academy didn't give up on attacking. Instead, they used their martial soul fusion skill and fought to the last moment. The remaining academies present watched in silence. For a moment they admired the God Wind Academy. If it were them, they would have chosen to admit defeat, but the God Wind Academy didn't. With the ability to fly, 9-1 didn't have any shortcomings. His fighting strength in the air was still incomparably powerful. With the help of the soul bone, the four hammers smashed the martial soul fusion skill formed by the two, cutting off their final hope of victory. It was ruthless and cold. This was the thought of many academies. Purple Star College wins. The referee's trembling voice indicated that his heart was not calm at this time. After the voice fell, Wang Feng didn't get off the stage. He just looked at the 7 people in the distance. He didn't use his full strength just now, so he used 4 hammers to smash the opponent's martial soul fusion skill and not seriously injure them. At this time, Huowu and Feng Xiaotian had already stood up, but their faces were very pale. But their injuries weren't serious. It was just that the flames in Huowu's eyes had been completely extinguished, and she looked a little listless. On the contrary, Feng Xiaotian was fine, just supporting Huowu. "Give up, sister. This person is too strong." Huowu Shuang whispered. "I vaguely feel that he held back just now. Otherwise, he would have used that spear to attack us." Because Huowu Shuang didn't make a move during the whole process, and because she was watching from a close distance, she could see some clues. Huowu didn't speak. Feng Xiaotian also looked at Wang Feng with a gloomy expression. From the preliminaries to the promotion round, this person was like a mountain, pressuring people to the point that they couldn't breathe. After the 2 academies combined, they had new tactics, new soul skills, and martial soul fusion skills, but they didn't have any chance of defeating this person. They didn't even let the other party suffer any injuries. Huowu didn't speak. She just sighed softly. This was the best she could do. Without speaking, Huowu walked down the stage with Feng Xiaotian's support. Under the light of the setting sun, her back slowly elongated, but finally disappeared from the stage. End of chapter. Chapter 429. Wang Feng shook his head slightly and turned to leave, returning to the Purple Star College's resting area. At this moment, Shui Bing-er's mouth was still slightly open as she watched 9 opening. She had watched in shock the entire time, starting from Fire Dance's Wind Dance of the Brilliant Sun. In fact, Most of the academies that could make it this far had a few tricks up their sleeve. It was obviously impossible to rely on various special tactics to win. Either the opponent was careless, had a trump card, or the opponent used their true strength to crush them. If one were to say that in the qualifiers and promotion matches, 91 Chance had used all kinds of unconstrained imagination to defeat countless teams, but now 9-1 Chance had used a truly unbeatable strength to crush and defeat his opponent. Of course, there were also schemes to hide his strength. These were all part of 9 Opening's plan. That was why today's match was held. The Divine Wind team had done well enough, but they still fell into 9 Opening's trap. Not only the Divine Wind team, but all the teams in the Heaven Do Empire were tricked by 9 Opening, making everyone think that he didn't have the ability to fly. As long as a team used this as a breakthrough point to deal with 9 Opening in the finals, they would definitely fall into his trap. Shui Bing was extremely impressed by his ability to hide his strength and scheme, but she was also a little afraid. After this competition ended, almost no team wanted to encounter a 9-1 team. Even the other seeded team, the Imperial Dipper team, didn't want to meet him. Little San, do you have any ideas to defeat 9 Opening? Dai Mubai asked in a low voice from Shrek Academy's side. As the commander of the team, Tang San wanted to use tactics to defeat 9 Opening, but he could only see if he could think of a good idea. But this time, Tang San was silent. If 9 Opening didn't give them a chance, the 7 of them had no chance of winning. He had seen clearly with his purple demon eyes just now that the spear had undergone a huge change after using the soul skill. This meant that the opponent's 10,000-year soul skill was not as simple as giving a pair of blood wings the ability to fly. There must be a more powerful ability. In other words, the opponent was still hiding his strength. Tang San couldn't help but burst out. How could they fight? They were no match for him in both air and land. Unless we use our fusion skill, Tang San said slowly, there might be a chance. Of course, the 7-man fusion skill wasn't a martial soul fusion skill. Grandmaster and Big Brother Feng had talked about this technique before. They had also tried it out. It could be said that they had learned something from it. The power was not bad, but it was only a small chance. The others were speechless when they heard Tang San's words. This was the first time someone had given them so much pressure before they even fought. He was even more troublesome than the golden generation of the Martial Spirit Palace. All right, let's watch the next match. Grandmaster's eyes flashed, and he said indifferently, the next match is between the Imperial Battle Team and the Martial Spirit Palace Team. If nothing unexpected happens, the 3 members of the Golden Generation should be on stage. The Imperial Battle Team is still very strong. Everyone hurriedly collected their thoughts and watched the next match. Wang Feng was also watching. Wang Feng was familiar with the Imperial Battle Team. The cautious Yu Tianheng had left a deep impression on him at that time. She was also the first special character that Wang Feng met who changed the original plot because of his influence. On the stage, Wang Feng saw the Imperial Battle Team that he hadn't seen in a long time. Yu Tianheng was still tall and handsome. Dugu Yan's hair had turned green after the poison was removed, which made her look even more beautiful. The other team members hadn't changed much, but they seemed more mature and steady. The ranks of their soul skills had also improved. They were all above rank 41. 2 years had passed, and their improvement wasn't exaggerated, but it was still very good. Yu Tianheng's rank was the highest, nearing rank 48. It was enough to show that he was the number 1 talent of the Blue Sky Tyrant Dragon Clan's younger generation. They've become more cautious. Wang Fengxin thought to himself. Yu Tianheng's gaze was steady and reserved. When he walked onto the stage, he even looked at the Shrek Academy team. Even against the Martial Spirit Palace team, Yu Tianheng's gaze didn't show any discouragement. His team members were the same. Meeting the Imperial Dipper Battle Team once again, Tang San couldn't help but sigh. He hadn't expected that Captain Yu Tianheng and his team members would not only become stronger, but their mentality had also become stronger. They must have gone through a lot of hard work in the past 2 years. Even against the Martial Spirit Palace team, they were still so steady and determined. Soon, the Martial Spirit Palace team stepped onto the stage. Among the 7 people, 3 were unfamiliar faces. They were the 3 members of the Golden Generation. The moment they stepped onto the stage, Wang Feng's pupils shrank. A familiar aura was slowly emitted from one of the women. Ugh! At this moment, Shui Bing-er's body trembled. "What's wrong?" Wang Feng asked. "It's Yaya's consciousness. I'm a little dizzy." Shui Bing-er shook her head and sat down. She pressed her head and said, "But I'm fine now. It's just a momentary shock." As she spoke, she couldn't help but look at the Golden Generation. Just now, she looked at one of the girls, and her skull trembled. Yaya's consciousness came uncontrollably. At this moment, the girl also looked at Shui Bing-er curiously. She was a very beautiful girl, but in terms of looks, she couldn't compare to Zhu Zhuqing or Ning Rongrong. However, her facial features were very beautiful, and when combined together, it gave people a sense of beauty. The more they looked at her, the more beautiful they felt. Especially those phoenix eyes, which could easily stir people's hearts with just a blink of her eyeliner. Wang Feng looked at the girl with a gloomy expression. It was Xing Xing's aura. It was the aura of the Star Moon Fox. Fortunately, Wang Feng didn't sense the little green bird's aura. This was probably the only thing that Wang Feng could be happy about. But this also meant that this girl must have absorbed the Star Moon Fox's soul ring. But Xing Xing's consciousness hasn't disappeared. Wang Feng's eyes under the white mask flashed with a murderous aura. He could sense Xing Xing's aura. This meant that Xing Xing's consciousness still existed in this girl. It might be similar to Shui Bing-er's situation. She also had a soul bone, but her soul hadn't disappeared. He didn't know how she did it. Wang Feng closed his eyes slightly. With the power of the Martial Spirit Hall, it was too easy to kill those 3 little guys. After all, they weren't 100,000-year soul beasts. Although it had become much stronger under the nurturing of his golden lotus, a soul beast with a cultivation of tens of thousands of years at most was already very impressive after a few years. If they were in the same situation as Shui Bing, then why is Xing Xing willing to become her soul ring? End of chapter. Chapter 430. Countless questions appeared in Wang Feng's mind. The Martial Spirit Palace was chasing after Qingqing and the other 2. It was understandable that Ye was willing to become Shui Bing-er's soul ring. After all, she had nothing to do with the Martial Spirit Palace. She was just a passerby. Ye could tell that she was from the Martial Spirit Palace. Wang Feng couldn't help but want to rush up to the stage and ask her. But Wang Feng held back. Since he could sense her aura, he could ask her sooner or later. This girl, if Wang Feng remembered correctly, should be the holy maiden of the Martial Spirit Palace, Hulaina. Her martial soul was a fox. She shouldn't be an ordinary fox. As for the other 2, one was Hulaina's brother, Evil Moon. Evil Moon had an ordinary face and a tall figure. However, he didn't give off an exaggerated feeling. Instead, he was well-proportioned. His black hair stood up like steel needles, which reminded Wang Feng of Red Ball from the King of Fighters. Wang Feng vaguely remembered that Evil Moon's martial soul was a tool martial soul. As for what it was, Wang Feng couldn't remember clearly. There was another man on the right side of Evil Moon. He should be one of the 3 golden generations, Yen. He also had an ordinary face and wasn't as tall as Evil Moon. His hair was red and gave off a blazing aura. It should be a fire-type martial soul. As for what it was, Wang Feng couldn't remember clearly. However, their soul power ranks were very, very high. Evil Moon was the highest, close to rank 56. He was the one with the highest soul power rank that Wang Feng had seen in this tournament. Hulaina was only level 54, and Flamesea was level 55. The three of them were all emitting a powerful aura, which made people feel incomparably terrifying just by looking at them. Their soul power ranks are too high. Wang Feng frowned slightly. Evil Moon was at least 8 ranks higher than Yu Tianheng. Such a huge gap in soul power couldn't be made up for by ordinary soul skills. Even with the resources of the Martial Spirit Palace, it shouldn't be so high. These three must have encountered a special opportunity. Furthermore, Wang Feng sensed a soul bone in Hulaina's body. In the head, it was obviously Xing Xing's soul bone, which was also where Xing Xing's consciousness was. As for the other two, Wang Feng did not sense any soul bones. After the three of them got on the stage, Evil Moon did not look at Yu Tianheng. Instead, he glanced at Jiu Kai with a provocative look in his eyes. Clearly, they were well aware of Jiu Kai's performance on stage. Wang Feng did not respond. He just watched quietly. Soon, the battle began. Almost at the first moment, Yu Tianheng and Du Guyan walked together. The two of them quickly fused together without any hesitation, while the other two Xuanwu Soul Masters stood in front of them. Martial Soul Fusion Skill. Looks like Yu Tianheng and Du Guyan have also grown quite a bit in these 2 years. Wang Feng sighed softly. Although martial soul fusion skills seemed mysterious, as long as two people were together for a long time, the compatibility between their martial souls would increase. Once you've been together for several years, 10 years, or even dozens of years, even if your martial souls reject each other in the beginning, as long as you try for a long time, you'll be able to form a martial soul fusion skill. This was the most difficult part of a martial soul fusion skill. The uniqueness of Wang Feng's Green Lotus was that it was naturally very compatible with all living things. Therefore, it could fuse with the 7 monsters. As long as Wang Feng wanted to, anyone could form a martial soul fusion skill with him. They just needed some time to adapt. Evidently, Yu Tianheng was very cautious. He knew that there was a huge difference between the two teams. If he wanted to win, he could only rely on a martial soul fusion skill. He had already prepared a strategy before the match. However, the Golden Generation did not wait. Hulaina walked out gently. A snow-white fox floated from her body. Seeing this fox, Wang Feng's eyes narrowed slightly. There was an imprint of a star between the fox's eyebrows. It's the imprint of a star moon fox. It's another mutated martial soul. Wang Feng muttered. Hulaina's martial soul should be a fox with extremely strong bewitchment abilities. Now, it's actually similar to Star's form. It seems like Star is willing to become her soul ring. Why is that? If Star was threatened or for some other reason, Hulaina's martial soul wouldn't have mutated even if she could absorb a soul ring, let alone a soul bone. At this moment, 5 soul rings lit up on Hulaina's body after she was protected by her martial soul. Yellow, purple, black. After being possessed by her martial soul, Hulaina's charm increased greatly. Her entire body was beautiful, but it wasn't gaudy. A furry tail grew from her back. Following that, Hulaina's first 4 soul rings lit up. Only the last black soul ring didn't light up. The faint red light in her eyes abruptly dissipated. The 2 black tortoise soul masters in front of the Imperial Dipper team subconsciously looked into her eyes. They were so stunned that even their defensive soul skills were dispelled. The other 2 soul masters were the same. Only Yi Lingling, who was at the back, was slightly better. She wasn't so severely bewitched. Roar. At this moment, a dragon's roar rang out from behind the 2 black tortoise soul masters. It immediately woke everyone up. But at this moment, Hulaina laughed softly. You guys are sleepy. Go to sleep. This decadent voice caused the 4 soul masters who had just woken up to fall to the ground. Wang Feng shook his head. The difference in soul power was too great. Furthermore, Hulaina's martial soul had mutated. They were no match for her. Fortunately, Yu Tianheng and Dugu Yan's martial soul fusion skill appeared. It transformed into a 10-meter-long, jade-green lightning dragon in the form of energy. The dragon's body was surrounded by lightning, but its body was jade-green. Martial soul fusion skill. Blue lightning jade-green Qilin dragon. A martial soul fusion skill formed by the fusion of a dragon and a snake. However, Wang Feng felt that this martial soul fusion skill was only equivalent to a rank 50 Soul King. It wasn't strong. At most, it was about the same strength as Evil Moon. But it was still quite good. It could increase the difference in soul power by 7 or 8 rank. Normally, it would be an instant kill against other teams. But now, it could only be said that they weren't affected by Hu Laiina's charm. Whether it was against Evil Moon or Yen, their chances of winning weren't high. But it was already very good that the Imperial Dipper team could reach this step. Humph! Evil Moon saw this and took a step forward. A pair of moon blades appeared in his hands. 5 soul rings suddenly lit up on his body. It seems Evil Moon and Hu Laiina have a martial soul fusion skill? Wang Feng saw this and thought to himself. But at this time, you, a rank 50 Soul King, need to use a martial soul fusion skill to deal with them. You are a little silly. End of chapter. Chapter 431. The difference in strength between the two sides was too great. With Hu Laiina's first attack, she directly charmed 7 people. Evil Moon and Yen didn't need to do anything. There were 4 soul ancestors behind them who could deal with these 7 people. Even if Yu Tianheng and Dugu Yan used their martial soul fusion skill, they might not be able to defeat the 4 soul ancestors behind the 3 members of the Golden Generation. These 4 people were able to become members of the Martial Spirit Hall Academy's team, so they were naturally not weak. They were all around rank 44. The 4 of them together were enough to deal with this blue lightning jade Qilin dragon. Moreover, they didn't need to expose Evil Moon and Yan's strength. Even if they really had a martial soul fusion skill, they could just use it as a trump card. Wang Feng felt that if he was the instructor of the Martial Spirit Hall Academy, with such a big gap, he would at most let Hu Laiina fight. Because Hu Laiina was too strong, at least Wang Feng thought so. The most important thing was that generally, when a weak team fought against a strong team, they would use their trump card to fight for a chance of victory. For example, the Divine Wind team, or Shrek in the previous qualifiers against the Elephant Armor sect. They all wanted to use martial soul fusion skill to defeat the opponent. You are a strong team, but you are so ridiculously strong that you even used a martial soul fusion skill to fight against Huang Do, who is far weaker than you? Logically speaking, even if you exposed your soul skill, it would be much better than exposing your martial soul fusion skill. Once people knew your martial soul fusion skill, they would be on guard. Wang Feng looked at Evil Moon, wanting to see if he was really naive. Wang Feng remembered that in the original book, Evil Moon seemed to have used a martial soul fusion skill with Hu Laiina. However, this time, it seemed that things didn't go as Wang Feng thought. Evil Moon rushed forward, the moon blade in his hand exuding a bright light, but he didn't fuse with Hu Laiina, nor did he use a martial soul fusion skill. He directly rushed towards the blue lightning jade Qilin dragon. Seeing this, Wang Feng was slightly stunned and thought to himself, it seems that they have changed a lot. They didn't use a martial soul fusion skill, so I don't know what kind of effect their martial soul fusion skill will have. Evil Moon didn't use a martial soul fusion skill. He just waved the moonblade in his hand directly towards the energy dragon. At the same time, the 4 members of the Martial Spirit Hall behind also quickly rushed towards the blue lightning jade Qilin dragon. It seems like the changes are not ordinary, Wang Feng murmured. The Martial Spirit Hall strategy is the most effective one. Those 4 soul masters have fought a few times, so they are the most suitable to support Evil Moon. And from the looks of it, the Martial Spirit Hall's Academy team and the 3 from the Golden Generation don't look down on them. Wang Feng shook his head. Generally speaking, there was a huge difference in strength between two teams. As long as the stronger team did not cause any trouble, they would not give the other team any chance. Moreover, the martial spirit hall didn't show any carelessness. They didn't even use the martial soul fusion skill that Wang Feng remembered. In that case, Yu Tianheng and the others had no chance of winning. With such a huge difference in soul power, even a martial soul fusion skill wouldn't bring them much of a chance of winning. Coupled with Hu Laiina's special charm, the four soul masters had almost completely lost their ability to fight at the start of the match. Then, as Wang Feng had expected, the rest of the battle was very simple. Evelmun's moonblade was extremely sharp, and it was a double-edged weapon. The angle of attack was very tricky. He didn't even use any soul skills. He only relied on his physical fitness and the support of the four soul ancestors to defeat the Azure Lightning Jade Qilin Dragon. The other Yin didn't have any intention to make a move at all, and after Hu Laiina used her charm on Huang Dou and the others, she didn't have any intention to make a move either. After a few minutes, as the Azure Lightning Jade Qilin Dragon dissipated, Yu Tianheng and Du Guyan's figures appeared. "We admit defeat." Yu Tianheng coughed out a mouthful of blood and said in a deep voice. Evil Moon snorted coldly. With a suction of his palm, the two moonblades returned to his hand. The other four soul masters followed behind him and retreated. This battle didn't end very quickly. It was much slower than the previous battle between Jiu Yikai and the Divine Wind team. Because Jiu Yikai, with his powerful strength, shattered Fire Dance and Feng Xiaotian's martial soul fusion skill with four hammers. Evil Moon and the four soul masters spent 2 minutes to defeat Yu Tianheng and Du Guyan's martial soul fusion skill. But in this battle, the three members of the Golden Generation didn't reveal much, very little. Only Hu Laiina revealed a bit of her strength. A powerful and terrifying group charm. As for the rest, he knew nothing. Moreover, Hu Laiina's mutated martial soul might have an even more exaggerated change. He didn't know what it would be like. If Little Three and the others encounter them, it should be very troublesome. Wang Feng pondered. The strength that these three people showed is really too little. Even I don't know much. Oh, my memory is not very clear. Wang Feng really couldn't remember the strength of these three people in the original work. He only remembered a martial soul fusion skill that seemed to turn them into a person that was neither male nor female. Moreover, Hu Laiina's martial soul has mutated. The corresponding martial soul fusion skill should have also changed. Maybe it can't even be used? Wang Feng glanced at Shui Bing'er beside him. Her situation was like this. The sudden mutation of the martial soul naturally had a great impact on the martial soul fusion skill. After today's competition, many of the academy teams had an idea in their hearts. Whether it was individual strength, it could be said to be a terrifying one. Or the golden generation of the martial spirit hall, they were far from what the other academies could compare to. Even if they really used their trump cards, it would be useless. If they encountered them, they would just admit defeat directly. Therefore, such a result directly led to the fourth day. Only in the fourth round there was not a single match, because the fourth round was the elimination round for the top 6. Purple Star, Shrek, Martial Spirit Hall, Heavenly Water, and 2 other academies. Wang Feng encountered Heavenly Water, and Shui Bing'er directly admitted defeat. The other team that the Martial Spirit Palace met also directly admitted defeat and forfeited. The only match was between Shrek and the other team. However, this match didn't happen. This was the third team from the Star Luo Empire in the advancement round. Logically speaking, this team's luck was really good, because on the first day they met Heaven Do, the weakest team, and won. On the second day, the first-ranked team had a bye, but Ares Academy was eliminated by Wang Feng. The second-ranked team was also eliminated in the first round. Therefore, they took over and had a bye. On the third day, the second-ranked team in the advancement round had a bye, and they also had a bye. Then it was the fourth round. Being able to make it to the top 6 made this team grin from ear to ear, because their original goal was only to survive the first round. Against Tang San, they didn't even think about it and directly admitted defeat. Just like that, on the 4th day they took a day off. On the 5th day, 3 teams were born: Purple Star, Shrek, and Martial Spirit Hall. On the 5th day, the venue of the competition had to be changed. It was a plaza in front of the Pope's Palace, only a few steps away from the Pope's Palace. The Pope's Palace was where Wang Feng checked in. A new week, please count the vote. End of chapter. Chapter 432. On the morning of the 5th day, Wang Feng woke up early in the morning. He had been simulating today's match the entire day. As for the final 3 teams, Wang Feng already knew who they would be when they entered the finals. Although he knew that this year's Golden Generation would be different from the original story, he didn't expect them to be so different. Yesterday, they didn't even reveal their martial soul fusion skills when they fought the Imperial Battle Team. Their soul power ranks were exceptionally high. At the same time, Hu Laiina had absorbed Xingxing's soul ring and possessed a soul bone. Xingxing had followed him for a few years. She wasn't an ordinary Starmoon Fox. Hu Laiina's abilities were definitely special. Wang Feng's mood was a little unstable. He had too many questions in his heart. As for the simulation of the last day's match, Wang Feng could only see a rough outline. However, Tang San's team would definitely face a huge threat. He couldn't fight. Not to mention, the 7-man team for the finals was already fixed and couldn't be changed. Even if he could fight in the individual round, he couldn't change his outfit in that kind of situation. The competition would be held outside the plaza of the Pontiff's Palace. There would be a bunch of titled Douluo there. According to Wang Feng's calculations, his identity might be exposed if he entered the finals. However, it didn't matter. At most, he would be disqualified from being the champion. Could the Martial Soul Hall use that as an excuse to kill him? Being the champion wasn't Wang Feng's goal. To him, it was just an additional reward. Wang Feng didn't really care about the 4 soul bones. When Wang Feng put on his 911 outfit and walked with Dean Feiluan to the Pontiff's Palace, he realized that the weather was exceptionally good. The weather is good today. Dean Feiluan chuckled. To be honest, I didn't expect you to make it this far. A third-rate academy from Heaven Do City had been dragged all the way to the finals of the Continental Elite Soul Master Tournament. Although many teams were used to it after watching the 9-1 fight, they were already used to it. However, if they thought about it from outside the circle, it was too terrifying. Champion, I don't have much confidence in you. I'm an honest person. Dean Feiluan continued, however, I'm already very satisfied that you've made it this far. For today's match, you'll have to play according to the situation. Oh right, after the competition ends, even if you don't continue to stay in Purple Star College, our school will still treat you as a symbol of our school and erect a statue for you. Wang Feng. He didn't answer. After the competition ended, Wang Feng wanted to figure out what had happened to Qingqing, Xingxing, and the other 2 little fellows before going to the next check-in location to cultivate, and then look for the little green bird. At the same time, he wanted to ensure that Xingxing and Yaya's consciousness would never dissipate. Therefore, Wang Feng naturally couldn't stay in Purple Star College any longer. The team from Shrek Academy and Martial Spirit Palace were also with them. There were a total of 15 people in the 3 teams. Including the accompanying teachers, they walked towards the splendid Hierophant Palace on the hill in front of them. The 3 teams each had their own strength. The team of the Martial Spirit Palace was full of confidence as they walked in the front. Behind him was Tang San's group. They were very calm. The last one was Wang Feng. Occasionally, he could see Tang San and the others. They would turn around to look at him, but there was no communication. At the foot of the hill, about 300 meters away, stood the paladins of the martial spirit palace. They held silver spears and stood in a cross position, solemn and dignified, forming a special ceremonial path. Soon, the three teams arrived at the square outside the Pope's palace. As they got closer, Wang Feng could see the gate of the Pope's palace that was only a few steps away. The gold-gilded gate was at least 10 meters tall. It was grand and magnificent, and there were 6 different special patterns engraved on it, symbolizing several titled Douluo. The semicircular arched door seemed to contain a divine power. Who knew what kind of light it would emit when it was opened? At this moment, the sound of a bell was heard. 12 red-robed bishops walked to both sides of the gate, like the guards in front of an ancient emperor. As their status was second only to the platinum bishops, they only had the qualification to guard here. They're really pretentious. Wang Feng's eyes didn't move. He looked at the gate calmly. One of the red-robed bishops at the front shouted in a clear voice, "His Majesty the Pope has arrived." His voice seemed to be able to spread to the entire martial spirit city. As soon as the bell rang, countless earth-shattering voices came from the foot of the hill and the martial spirit city. The voices of "Long live the Pope" were louder and louder, with a fanatical belief and loyalty in them. Wang Feng knew that it was impossible for the red-robed bishops' voices to reach the martial spirit city. It should be that special bell sound that reached the martial spirit city. It meant that His Majesty the Pope was about to appear, so it attracted such a loud and clear voice. It was even more exciting than when Wang Feng saw the opening ceremony of the 2008 Olympic Games in his previous life. In such an environment, even if one wasn't a member of the martial spirit palace, he would feel a sense of respect and reverence. When the gate opened, the cheers seemed to have reached a peak. Wang Feng also saw the people coming. From the moment the gate opened, it seemed that tens of thousands of spotlights were shining from inside. 4 golden figures walked out, followed by another figure. After a while, when the group of people walked out, they could see clearly. Leading them was Pope Bibidon. Her papal robe was specially made, with a bright gold base and 3 gems of red, blue, and gold. It was overflowing with colors and looked noble. The purple gold crown on her head was even more majestic. Wang Feng took a glance and retracted his gaze. Although Pope Bibidon was the same age as Master, he couldn't tell at all. She was beautiful, but more of a majestic presence. It reminded Wang Feng of Wu Zetian in his previous life. With such a status and strength, it was enough to make people forget her beauty. They were only awed by her majesty and bearing. The 3 people beside her were also wearing bright gold robes. There was a huge, angular gem embedded in their chests, symbolizing their status as titled Douluo. Naturally, only titled Douluo were qualified to wear such robes. They were the Ghost Douluo, the Chrysanthemum Douluo, and the Sword Dalu. Although the Sword Douluo was a member of the 7 Treasure Glazed Tile sect, he was also an honorary elder of the Martial Spirit Palace. Normally, he didn't participate in the Martial Spirit Palace's matters. The other 2 titled Douluo were different from when they first attacked them. They didn't cover their faces. The Chrysanthemum Douluo looked a little feminine. His skin was very white and tender, and he took better care of his skin than a girl. Although the Ghost Douluo was wearing a bright gold robe, his face was wrapped in a layer of fog, as if it had been pixelated. It was impossible to see what he looked like. The last person was Ning Fengji. He wasn't a titled Douluo, but his status was there. Naturally, he was qualified to walk out with the Pope. End of chapter. Chapter 433. After Bibidon walked out with the 4 of them, all the people of the Martial Spirit Palace present knelt down on one knee to show their respect. However, Tang San and the others didn't kneel down. Of course, Wang Feng didn't kneel down either. In this kind of place, it was a kind of disrespect in theory, but there was no rule that said they had to kneel. Just like the people of the Star Luo Empire, when they saw the Emperor of the Heaven Do Empire, They were not controlled by the Heaven Do Empire, so they naturally didn't have to kneel down. Seeing this, the red-robed bishop behind them was angry and was about to get angry. But he was stopped by Bibidon with a wave of her hand. Her eyes first swept over Shrek and the others, then quickly fell on Tang San. Tang San was the disciple of the master, so Bibidon knew very well who Tang San was. Although she was just examining them, there was a special majesty in her eyes. The 7 of them did not dare to look her in the eye. Only Tang San's eyes were shining with purple light, and he barely dared to look Bibidon in the eye. Wang Feng watched all this quietly. Bibidon was almost 50 years old and had rich experience. She had been in charge of the martial spirit palace for so many years. Her power was released without being angry. Coupled with her hidden strength as a titled Douluo, not to mention a soul ancestor over 40, even a soul emperor over 60 wouldn't dare to look at her. Sometimes Wang Feng would think that the master's identity and Bibidon's identity were like heaven and earth. How did they fall in love with each other? But thinking about it, Bibidon didn't care about a person's strength at that time, but more about a person's ability in all aspects. Although the master's martial soul was trash, his upper limit was very low. But his intelligence and wisdom were top-notch. In comparison, he could naturally attract others. Bibidon was like this, and so was Lu Erlong. Moreover, in the original work, Tang San's path in the early stage would have been many times more difficult without the guidance of the master. Shrek's 7 monsters wouldn't have existed. Bibidon sized up Tang San for a while, but there was no change in his eyes. He just nodded slightly. His calm voice did not have any trace of age, only smooth and majestic. The student has surpassed the teacher. Not bad. Compared to your teacher back then, you don't lose to him. Hearing this, many people were astonished, including the members of the Martial Spirit Palace. After all, almost no one present knew the relationship between Bibidon and the master. Wang Feng was an exception. Tang San, however, replied in a neither servile nor overbearing manner, "Your Highness, you flatter me. There is still a big gap between my teacher and me." Although he was being modest, many people obviously didn't think so. Bibidon didn't say anything more. She looked around Shrek and the others as if she was looking for another person, but she couldn't find him. Thus, he did not look any further. Tang San thought to himself, "It seems that His Majesty the Pope knows a lot about us. He was probably looking for Big Brother Feng just now. Unfortunately, Big Brother Feng didn't come today." Thinking of this, Tang San felt rather regretful. Although the master said that Big Brother Feng couldn't play in the finals and they could only rely on themselves. But it was good to come and watch the competition anyway. Only last night, Wang Feng came over to discuss tactics with them and the master. He told them that the Golden Generation was very likely to have a powerful martial soul fusion skill and warned them to be careful. Also, they must pay attention to that Hu Liena. He didn't say anything else. At this time, Bibidon looked at a figure in another position. He was wearing a black robe and a white mask. He looked like a lonely guest walking in the shadows, looking mysterious and cold. "How dare you? Why don't you take off your mask when you see His Majesty the Pope?" A red-robed bishop rebuked angrily, "This place is so sacred, how can you be so sneaky?" In an instant all eyes were focused on this figure. 9 open. The master outside the square frowned slightly and didn't say anything. The members of the Martial Spirit Palace team, and the 3 members of the Golden Generation were also staring at 9 open. In the hearts of the 3 of them, according to the analysis of many teachers and experts in the Martial Spirit Palace 4 days ago, they had already listed 9 open as their biggest enemy. It could be imagined how curious and attentive the 3 of them were to this 9 open. Bibidon was also watching 9 open. The mask only covered the face, but the eyes couldn't be mistaken. Compared to the purple light in Tang San's eyes before, this 9 open's eyes were unusually calm, like a quiet pool. When he looked at her, there was no fluctuation. Bibidon was a little surprised. At this time, Wang Feng slowly opened his mouth and said in a hoarse voice, "I'm too ugly. If I take off the mask, I'm afraid I'll scare His Majesty the Pope. Although His Majesty the Pope's eyes are like torches and he doesn't care about a person's appearance, if you suddenly let me take off the mask and scare His Majesty the Pope, wouldn't you commit a heinous crime?" Hearing this, the whole place was silent in an instant. The red-robed bishop was refuted to the point that he couldn't say a word. His face turned red and he pointed at Nine Open. Pft! Hyena from the Golden Generation chuckled softly and blinked her eyes. "This Nine Open, he's really bold." Evil Moon and Yen didn't speak and just looked at Wang Feng seriously. "You can leave." Bibidon glanced at the red-robed bishop and said slowly, "This is his personal privacy. The competition doesn't stipulate that you can't wear a mask, and my martial spirit palace doesn't have any rules that force everyone to show their face." Ghost Douluo was a good example, although the two's status and strength were not comparable. After saying that, Bibidon didn't look anymore. Instead, she walked to the high platform in the square and gave a simple speech. Wang Feng nodded slightly. Although Bibidon was a villain in the original work, as the Pope of the Martial Spirit Palace, her words were indeed like a spring breeze, and there was no intention of coercion. However, in front of everyone, in order to maintain the dignity of the Pope, she naturally wouldn't act recklessly. After the speech, Bibidon waved the scepter in her hand gently. 4 soul bones directly floated in midair. Wang Feng glanced at them. The highest among these soul bones was only about 50,000 years old, which wasn't bad. However, Wang Feng didn't think much of them. The 50,000-year-old soul bone was a skull. Other than that, there was also a left and right hand bone and a leg bone. They were all soul bones that were more than 10,000 years old. Among these 4 soul bones, the skull is the skull of wisdom, the right arm that can explode and burn, the left arm that can move mountains, and the left leg that can chase the wind at extreme speed. They are all soul bones that are more than 10,000 years old, and the skull of wisdom is more than 50,000 years old. The one who spoke was the chrysanthemum Douluo, who introduced them in a soft voice. Although his voice gave everyone goosebumps, it was still very shocking. Soul bones that were more than 50,000 years old. And the skull. Among the soul bones, other than the external soul bones, the most precious parts were the torso and head. One could imagine. There is only one champion in the competition, and the rewards only belong to the champion team. Bibidon glanced at the 15 people. This morning, you will participate in the individual competition. The team that stands at the end will directly enter the finals, and the remaining 2 teams will participate in the team competition in the afternoon to fight for the other spot in the finals. Now, you can send your team members to prepare for the competition. End of chapter. Chapter 434. In this kind of individual competition, it was very disadvantageous for only one person to have a 9-1 chance, because he would have to face the joint attack of the other 2 teams. He was alone and there was no possibility of rotation. If the 2 teams joined forces and attacked the 9-1 chance, they could defeat the 9-1 chance. Even if they didn't lose, it would be a Pyrrhic victory if the 9-1 chance won. The next day was the finals, and the 9-1 chance would not have time to recover. In the finals on the second day, he would not be able to use his full strength against the other team. He would definitely lose. It was almost impossible for him to win the competition by himself. However, this was based on the strong alliance between Shrek Academy and Martial Spirit Palace. In fact, on the 4th day, Martial Spirit Palace went to Shrek Academy. They asked to join forces with them to severely injure the 9-1 chance. If the 9-1 chance lost, the 9-1 chance would not be able to fight again in the team competition. Then both teams could enter the finals steadily and decide the winner at that time. If the 9-1 chance won, then the two teams would fight in the afternoon. Whoever won would be the champion of the finals on the second day. No matter what, there was no disadvantage for the two teams to join forces with each other. As long as they defeated the mysterious and powerful 9-1 first, the champion would only be between the two teams. After hearing the Martial Spirit Palace's proposal, Tang San and the others were silent for a long time. As early as in the individual competition, they had already fought seriously with the 9-1 chance. However, it was almost a one-sided crushing. So they were a little hesitant about the Martial Spirit Palace's proposal and then asked the master. But the master said, "It depends on your own choice. If the three teams compete for hegemony, it's not a bad thing for the other two teams to join forces. On the contrary, it can form a balance." Then Tang San went to ask Wang Feng. Wang Feng also said, "Ask your own heart. If you want to join forces, then join forces. If you don't, then don't." After some choice, Tang San and the others still did not choose to join forces with the Martial Spirit Palace. Regarding this, the Martial Spirit Palace didn't say anything. In fact, Tang San and the others were a little frightened by the Martial Spirit Palace's choice. The strength of the Martial Spirit Palace could be seen from the battle with the Imperial Battle Team. It was almost a one-sided crushing. 3 Soul Kings around level 55. This was an existence that far surpassed all the other teams. But even so, the 3 of them still chose to join forces with the Shrek Academy to deal with the 9-1 odds. It was easy to imagine that the Martial Spirit Palace Academy had already listed 9-1 as their number 1 enemy. In fact, Tang San was even more terrified after he reviewed the September 1st match and analyzed it from beginning to end. Because from the current performance of the 9-1, it was impossible for anyone from the third generation of the Golden Generation to do what he did. One person had fought so many battles. He had never lost before. In almost every battle, he quickly understood the enemy in a short period of time and used the most precise attack method to crush the enemy with tyrannical strength that seemed to never end. Even though his soul force was only around rank 40, the strength and intelligence he displayed was something that even a rank 60 soul emperor or a rank 70 soul sage couldn't compare to. It was no wonder that even though Martial Spirit Palace had 3 members of the Golden Generation, they still chose to team up with them to deal with 9-1 in the individual competition. In this competition, 9-1 will be the final enemy. When he thought of this, Tang San was suddenly awakened. This mysterious 9-1, who had left everyone in the dust in the Heaven Do City qualifiers, had actually become the final boss of this competition. In fact, Tang San's thoughts weren't completely correct. The Martial Spirit Palace Academy wanted to team up with them. Other than the fact that they wanted to be strong, the main reason was that they didn't want to waste too much effort in the individual battles. If it was a team battle, they weren't afraid of 9-1. In addition, the threat of 9-1 was too great. It would be more reassuring to get rid of them as soon as possible. In comparison, Shrek Academy was weaker. Even if they competed with them for the championship, their chances of winning were very low. Soon, the competition officially began. Because Purple Star College only had 9-1 odds, they could only send him alone. Shrek Academy and Martial Spirit Palace each sent one person. Shrek sent Jingling, and Martial Spirit Palace sent another rank 43 soul ancestor. The 3 of them drew lots. Wang Feng's luck was very good. This meant that Jing Ling and Martial Spirit Palace's soul ancestor would fight. But Shrek Academy directly admitted defeat. Because the soul ancestor of Martial Spirit Palace was a control-type soul ancestor, he was very good at restraining Jing Ling. Then it was time for the soul ancestor of Martial Spirit Palace to fight with Wang Feng. But Martial Spirit Palace also chose to admit defeat. In the first round, Wang Feng won directly. Tang San's team and the Golden Generation frowned slightly. The two teams didn't team up, and now they didn't want to fight with Wang Feng because they knew that whoever went up would definitely lose. At that time, their team members would lose their combat power, which would be very disadvantageous for the rest of the team battle. Tang San's team had fought with 9-1. Even though more than a month had passed, their strength had improved. But from the two finals, the strength of 9-1 was far more than that. So it was almost impossible for them to win the individual battles. Both teams didn't want to lose, so the situation in the first round was like this. There weren't many Soul Masters present, but most of them were famous figures in the Soul Master world, not to mention many Soul Masters from Martial Spirit Palace. There was a row of seats in front of the door. It was really Pope Bibidon and the other four. Seeing this scene at this time, they also frowned slightly. Wang Fengxin smiled. Logically speaking, if the two teams joined forces to fight him, it meant that he would have to face 14 people in a round-robin battle. Although it wouldn't be strenuous, it would be more mentally exhausting. It wouldn't be easy to defeat them. But if they didn't team up and no one wanted to fight with him, then the one who would benefit in the end would still be him. But with Tang San's character, he would never team up with Martial Spirit Palace. Humph, this Shrek Academy is really a coward. Yen snorted coldly. I'll go next. I've fought with 9-1. Evil Moon shook his head and frowned. Shrek Academy fought with 9-1 in the advancement match. I don't know the details, but 9-1 strength, Yen, do you think you can do it? Our teachers have analyzed that 9-1's individual strength is far above ours. If we want to defeat him, we can only rely on the team battle. If it's two teams, we'll have a chance to defeat 9-1 in the individual battle and make him lose most of his combat ability. But if we don't team up, we may not be able to defeat him even if we take turns. If you go up, I can guarantee that you won't be able to withstand a few moves. What if you get injured and can't recover in time? This was the concern of all the teams in the top three. Wang Feng was now Cao Cao in the Romance of the Three Kingdoms. If Sun Lu didn't team up, it was almost impossible to defeat him in an individual battle. Whoever went up would mean that their overall combat ability would be weakened. End of this chapter. Chapter 435. What else can we do? If this goes on, are we going to let 9-1 Open retain his full strength and directly advance to the finals? Are we going to fight Shrek in the afternoon? Even if we win against Shrek, what are our chances of winning against a 9-1 team in their peak condition? Yen said in a deep voice, this Shrek Academy is really stupid. Joining forces to defeat 9-1 Open is the wisest choice. They watched 9-1 Open all the way here, so their understanding should be clearer than ours. In fact, if the ambush hadn't happened, Tang San and the others might have really chosen to join forces with the Martial Spirit Hall team. But it was impossible now. The three from the Golden Generation didn't know that Bibidon had secretly sent people to assassinate Shrek's team. At this moment, the second round began. Shrek's team sent Huang Yuan, and the Martial Spirit Hall's team sent another rank 44 agility-type Soul Master. After the draw, Wang Feng's first opponent was the rank 44 agility-type Soul Master from the Martial Spirit Hall team. This time, the Martial Spirit Hall team member didn't choose to admit defeat. This agility-type Soul Master's martial soul was a Wind Feather Kangaroo, a very high-quality agility-type Soul Master. It had decent speed, and with the addition of the wind element, it was considered a unique existence among the agility-type Soul Masters. Obviously, he wanted to try attacking. But very quickly, their hopes were dashed by the 9-1 opening. In less than 2 seconds, this agility-type Soul Master was directly defeated. The battle was very simple, and there was nothing exaggerated. This Wind Feather Kangaroo Soul Master released his martial soul at the beginning and was about to attack. But Wang Feng used the mysterious underworld spike to form 2 3 to 4 meter long iron rods and sent him flying with terrifying speed. He didn't even have a chance to attack. Without the speed of a rank 55 agility-type Soul Master, there was no way to dodge Wang Feng's attack. This made the Martial Spirit Hall team feel a little powerless again. When Huang Yuan went up against Wang Feng, he directly admitted defeat under Tang San's request. Wang Feng's individual competition this time wasn't like the previous qualifiers, where he used all kinds of fancy tricks. He used pure strength and speed to crush his opponent. Logically speaking, when Wang Feng fought against Tang San and the others in the rank advancement match, he used more tricks to defeat the 8 of them quickly in order to hide his strength. And now, after entering the finals, Wang Feng had been using pure strength to crush his opponents. This caused the opponent to feel even more despair, which was why the situation was like this. What should we do? This 9-1 is really not giving us any chances now. Ma Hongjun scratched his head. I think the Martial Spirit Palace is also a little anxious. If this goes on, they won't be able to exhaust much of their fighting strength. If they bring out their real strength and are afraid of exposing their strength, the 3 Golden Generation will definitely not come out. We've already fought with Jiui a long time ago. Everyone was silent. There was no solution. These 2 words appeared in everyone's mind. Why don't we just admit defeat and preserve our strength, and let the Martial Spirit Palace battle team fight Team 9? Ning Rongrong's eyes lit up. If we withdraw, the Martial Spirit Palace team might bring out their true abilities to fight against Jiui. At that time, both sides will suffer. Although we are in the losers group, we still have hope of winning against any of them in the afternoon. Everyone's eyes lit up. Good idea. But what if the Martial Spirit Palace also admits defeat? The 9-1 will not consume any energy and directly enter the finals. Tang San slowly said, then the Martial Spirit Palace will fight against us in full strength in the afternoon. At that time, even if they win, it will be difficult for them to recover. How will they fight against Jiui tomorrow? Ning Rongrong was stunned and immediately showed a bitter face. It shouldn't be, right? Rongrong's idea is good because... Xiao Wu's tone was a little strange. They are different from us. They are the Golden Generation of the Martial Spirit Palace, the 3 people that the Martial Spirit Palace has high hopes for. With the pride of the Martial Spirit Palace, how can they admit defeat? Even if they want to, the Martial Spirit Palace will not agree, not to mention that the Pope is here. Xiao Wu's words stunned everyone. Also, why didn't they admit defeat in the second round? It's because they don't want to continue like this. And those 3 are the Golden Generation, they will not admit defeat directly. They will definitely fight and they must fight. Xiao Wu continued. After she finished speaking, Shrek and the others were all stunned. Even Tang San had not thought about this. He had been thinking about the tactics of the battle. But he had never thought of thinking about this problem from a higher point of view. Thinking of this, it suddenly dawned on him. Yes, they dared to admit defeat because they were just Shrek Academy. But how could the Martial Spirit Palace dare to admit defeat? They were the symbol of the younger generation of the Martial Spirit Palace. If they admitted defeat without even fighting, how could they raise their heads in the Martial Spirit Palace in the future? The Martial Spirit Palace had lost all face. What qualifications did they have to be the Golden Generation? They were even awarded the Purple Merit Badge by the Pope. If they admitted defeat directly, it would be even more humiliating than if they were defeated directly. Tang San glanced at Xiao Wu with a smile on his face. This should be the way to break out of this situation. The rest of the people also trembled and suddenly came to their senses. They figured it out before the 3rd round began. Tang San stood out on behalf of Shrek Academy and shouted, "We, the Shrek Academy, admit defeat and voluntarily enter the losers group in the afternoon." As soon as he said that, the audience fell silent. The masters sitting in the spectator seats smiled faintly. Retreating in order to advance. It seems that you have matured to think of this point. The master sighed softly. What's so good about admitting defeat? Lu Erlong frowned and said, what if the martial spirit palace also admits defeat? Then the other three won't even have a chance to win, right? But the master pointed to the martial spirit palace and whispered, do you think they will admit defeat? Hearing this, Lu Erlong looked over and was stunned. The members of the martial spirit palace looked extremely gloomy, especially the three members of the Golden Generation. As members of the Golden Generation, the Pope personally awarded them the Purple Merit Badge and placed high hopes on them. They won't admit defeat directly. The master smiled and said, the three of them have taken on too much glory and responsibility. This is where Shrek's 7 monsters have an advantage over them. They don't have so many burdens. Lu Erlong suddenly understood. She looked at the Bibidon sitting in front of the gate of the Pope's palace and found that the Bibidon was frowning slightly at this moment. At this moment, the red-robed referee was also stunned. He didn't expect that the Shrek Academy would admit defeat directly. Then, the only thing left was to fight with the Martial Spirit Palace in the one-on-one battle. There was only one person in a 9-1 situation. They didn't even need to draw lots. The Martial Spirit Palace only needed to send people to fight. As long as they defeated the Martial Spirit Palace, they would be the winners group tomorrow. End of chapter. Chapter 436. What a cunning Shrek Academy! Yen said angrily, they are sure that we won't admit defeat, so they deliberately let us fight 9-1. Do they want to be the fisherman who benefits? The other two were silent. In fact, Xiao Wu was right and so was the master. The three of them had borne too much glory and light. Even if the other team members could admit defeat, they couldn't directly admit defeat on behalf of the academy. Otherwise, it would be a disgrace. Even if they lost to 9-1, it was much better than admitting defeat directly. But after the fight, their overall strength would be greatly weakened, and it would be easy to expose their strength. Then let's go. Evil Moon said in a deep voice, we naturally can't admit defeat. If we can directly defeat 9-1, then we still have half a day to rest. Admit defeat directly? What a joke. The Pope was still here. If they admitted defeat directly, the Martial Spirit Hall would lose a lot of face. Shrek and the others didn't have any burdens. On the other side, Wang Feng also showed a smile. It seemed that Little Three and the others were smart enough to admit defeat now. Then, I hope to see you in the finals. Wang Feng's eyes flickered. He looked at the people from the Martial Spirit Hall and walked directly to the center of the square. The meaning was obvious. The red-robed referee didn't say anything and looked directly at the Golden Generation. At this moment, Pope Bibidon suddenly said, it's okay to admit defeat. It's not a problem to admit defeat. This is your right. However, since you've admitted defeat, go back and prepare for the match this afternoon. Hearing this, Tang San and the others' expressions changed slightly. This Pope was indeed not simple. It was obvious that he wanted to drive them away so that they couldn't see the individual battle between 9-1 and the Golden Generation of the Martial Spirit Hall. This meant that they couldn't know the detailed strength of the Golden Generation. Wang Feng was quite interested. Although this back and forth was not a battlefield, it also showed the shrewdness of this Pope Bibidon. Obviously, he wanted to hide the strength of the Martial Spirit Hall to the greatest extent. The masters stood up and slowly left the square with Tang San and the others. They couldn't find any reason to stay. However, Ning Fengji and the sword Douluo didn't leave. The representative of the Heaven Do Empire didn't leave either. As the Crown Prince, Xue Qinghe was also present. They were invited here, so it was only right for them to watch. The Star Luo Empire's representative team had already left Martial Spirit City the day before because none of their teams had made it to the finals. There weren't many viewers at the moment. I'll go first. On the other side, Yen said in a deep voice, the rest of the team members can conserve their strength, but the three of us can't admit defeat. Now that Shrek's team is gone, we can bring out our skills and fight them. Then I'll go second. Little Na, you'll go last. A strange light flashed in Evil Moon's eyes. Hulaina also nodded. Yen walked onto the arena. He, who had already endured for a long time, practically had an explosive force surging out of his body with every step he took. The rank 55 soul warriors, 5 soul rings, suddenly lit up. A pure elemental ancient beast martial spirit like the Lord of the Flames was extremely rare. To be able to become a member of the Golden Generation, he was naturally not weak. Yellow, yellow, purple, purple, black. Many of the teachers in the hall had analyzed 9-1 Kai in various ways and determined that his individual strength was at least above level 65. It was even possible for him to reach level 70. He could be called an inconceivable peerless genius. However, he was not convinced. There were some things that no matter how much he analyzed, he would never be able to fight them. With their pride, they would not be completely convinced. Match begin. The red-robed bishop shouted softly. After saying that, Yen roared, and the soul rings on his body lit up one after another. Countless flames spread throughout his body, and a huge flaming humanoid appeared directly from his body. It was his martial soul, the Lord of the Flames. After the martial soul possession, Yan's limbs were all burning with flames. There was also a flame burning between his eyebrows, and his eyes were crimson red. At this moment, Wang Feng was already attacking him. Wang Feng's speed was naturally very fast, and he did not even use the soul-killing spear. Previously, Zhan Xiaotian was enhanced by 2 extreme limits, and coupled with the influence of the environment, that was why Wang Feng was able to use the soul-killing spear. Although this Yen was very strong, if he wanted Wang Feng to use the soul-killing spear, it was not something that could be done with just a martial soul possession. Wang Feng also wanted to understand the specific strength of these people. Yan's martial soul was not weaker than Zhan Xiaotian's Zhan Meng beast. It could only be said that they were on par. However, it was also a very comprehensive martial soul. Strength and defense were absolute advantages. His attacks were also accompanied by a special effect. It was a powerful divine wind martial soul, and it had no obvious weaknesses. However, speed was not his forte. However, he did not need to be very fast. Anyone who dared to attack him would be burned by his flames. Soul skill. Raging flame body. Jiui Kai was extremely fast, and there was no fancy whistling as he punched towards Yen. Yan's 4th soul ring lit up. Suddenly, his skin turned golden red, and he looked indestructible. 1000-year soul skill, raging flame body. Increases one's defense by 100%, making one's body extremely tough. Increases one's strength by 50%, and when flames cover one's entire body to attack an enemy, the enemy will be burned. This was one of his core soul skills. Jiui Kai was very fast, and he could only use his 4th soul skill as a test. He punched towards Jiui Kai, who was covered in flames. The 2 fists collided. Instantly, a strong flow of flames was unleashed. Yan's expression changed slightly, and he could not help but glide back more than 10 meters. Just his physical strength is so strong. No wonder the teachers analyzed that this person's strength is at least above rank 60. Yan's eyes were a little gloomy. However, if you take this punch head-on, your hand will be affected by my flames. Furthermore, the flames have the ability to corrode soul power. The flames in his soul skill were naturally not ordinary flames. However, when Yen looked at Jiui Kai's fist, he was stunned. Jiui Kai did not take half a step back, but there were no traces of flames on his fist, and it looked a little white under the sunlight. Fire immunity? Yen was stunned. His body is also fire immune? Not only him, but all the spectators were also stunned as they looked at Jiui Kai. At this moment, Wang Feng did not give him any time to think. With one punch, Wang Feng had already tested Yan's strength. The quality of his martial soul was similar to Zhang Xiaotian's, but his soul power was much higher, so his overall strength was much stronger. Furthermore, he had a fifth soul skill. Then, let me see what other special abilities you have. Wang Feng waved his hand. Although his body was immune to flames, his opponent's flames had other abilities, and he was not immune to them. Yan's body was extremely tough now, and was not inferior to Zhang Xiaotian's. In fact, he was even stronger. Wang Feng charged forward once again, and leapt high into the air. The mysterious underworld spike in his hand became extremely huge. His strength poured out, and he smashed the hammer down with all his might. There's still time tonight, please count the tickets. End of chapter. Chapter 437. Wang Feng used his full strength. With this hammer, even a rank 60 soul master would be dead. But Yan was from the Martial Soul Hall's golden generation. His martial soul and soul power were the best among his peers. This hammer attack covered the sun in his line of sight. The violent airflow exploded from the hammer, and a series of violent sounds exploded in the air. Yan was startled. He didn't dare to be careless. He circulated his soul power with all his might, and his fourth soul skill was already at its peak. His entire body shone with a golden red light, making him look like a red-hot copper man. The second yellow soul ring on his body suddenly lit up, and a red light barrier lit up on his body. Soul skill, Flame Barrier. It was also a defensive soul skill, used to block the enemy's attack. It was similar to Dai Mubai's protective barrier. In addition to defense, it could also increase one's strength by 30%. Two defensive soul skills superimposed, and Yan was barely able to breathe a sigh of relief. But when the hammer came crashing down, his expression changed once more, because he saw that the hammer's surface was suddenly covered with dense spikes. Under these spikes, the flame barrier around his body was directly shattered. It couldn't even resist for half a second. A light flashed through Yan's mind. This is the transformation of his soul bone? He used this move last time, and easily broke the Godwind Academy's martial soul fusion skill with 4 hammers? Before he could think clearly, the spikes disappeared, and the hammer directly hit his chest. Bang! It was like 2 pieces of iron and stone had struck each other. There was a stuffy cough and Yan's chest visibly caved in. Boom! His whole body was directly sent flying. Because it hit Yan's chest diagonally, when Yan was sent flying, he was sent flying in a slightly curved parabola. But Wang Feng didn't stop. The huge hammer in his hand turned, and directly turned into 2 long spears. Wang Feng landed on the ground and swung his arms. The 2 long spears broke through the air. Wang Feng still didn't stop. The black light in his hand condensed, and once again formed a pitch-black bow. Xiu xiu xiu. 3 long arrows directly formed a triangle and shot towards the flying Yan. This was the combo that Wang Feng had thought of these days, using the mysterious underworld spike to form. Using the dark nether spike to form a 10,000-pound hammer, he could knock the enemy away and then quickly form other weapons to deal great damage to the enemy in the air. This required an extremely strong reaction speed and high-intensity practice. With Wang Feng's current physical fitness, he was able to execute such a seamless combo. 2 long black spears with blunt tips struck Yan's hands. 2 of the 3 arrows landed on Yan's feet while the last one hit his lower abdomen. Rumble! Yan directly smashed onto the ground, his 4 limbs twitching incessantly. His entire body was bent like a cooked prawn. No matter how strong his 4th soul skill was, it was impossible for him to remain unscathed after being hit so many times. Especially when he was sent flying by the 5,000-kilogram hammer, it could be said that all of his soul force had been channeled to his chest to resist the hammer's attack. When he was sent flying, he simply did not have the mental strength to defend against the remaining attacks. This was the damage caused by the mysterious dark spike combo. After this combo, Yen only felt that his 4 limbs were about to break. Intense pain came from all over his body. Wang Feng started with the hammer because it was very strong. Its attack area was concentrated and brutal. It could unleash the full force of 5,000 kilograms, making it difficult for the enemy to defend. Simply put, it was to stun the enemy. It was used to break domineering soul skills like the Raging Flame Body. Such domineering soul skills could greatly increase the enemy's defensive strength and make it difficult to shake him. He had to fully unleash the advantage of the mysterious underworld armor. Whether it was spears, swords, blades, spears, or other weapons, they were not as effective as the hammer. However, Wang Feng did not follow up with another attack. Instead, he waited. Everyone focused their gazes. Is he waiting for the enemy to use his 10,000-year soul skill? Ning Fengji whispered, Uncle Jian, this person's body should be fire-resistant, right? He's the same as Tang San. The sword Douluo nodded slightly. With their experience as titled Douluo, they could not miss out on any detail in the battle earlier. On the other side, Bibidon and the other 2 titled Douluo were very calm. They knew every match in the finals very well. Naturally, they had already analyzed 9-to-1 strength and how strong he could be. Although the current situation was a little unexpected, it was not beyond their expectations. It was just that Yen was defeated too quickly. 9-to-1 completely understood Yan's soul skill. However, 9-to-1 did not continue to attack at this time. Evidently, he was waiting. He was waiting confidently and powerfully. On the other side, the other 2 members of the Golden Generation were very upset. Although Yan's soul power rank was only 1 rank lower than Evil Moon's, their overall strength was almost the same. This was because Evil Moon had a tool soul. Without a tool soul true body, it could not be compared to a beast soul. Therefore, when they saw Yen being crushed like this without any strength to fight back, and now he was like a pig being reared, waiting to use his 5th soul skill, they could not accept it. Naturally, they could not accept it. At this time, Yen, who was lying on the ground, finally revealed his pitch-black martial soul. A 10,000-year soul skill was a turning point for a soul master. As this soul ring shone, Yan's body suddenly seemed to split open. Countless cracks appeared, like the cracks on the surface of magma. Scarlet magma-like blood overflowed from the surface, and then his body burned with fierce flames. From afar, he looked like a man on fire. Soul skill, soul ignition, Yen shouted angrily. Under the support of the 10,000-year soul, he seemed to have become a real flame lord. But this was not a martial soul true body. It was a special 10,000-year soul skill. To use this skill, special conditions were required. First, he needed to reach the peak of his anger. Second, the body had to suffer a fatal attack. This was the second characteristic of the Flame Lord martial soul after he obtained the 10,000-year soul ring. It could absorb the opponent's strength. When it reached a certain point, it could use this strength to activate the 50,000-year soul skill. And the 5th soul skill, Soul Ignition, could increase one's strength and defense by 100%. It could cause the skin to burn, greatly weaken physical attacks, and cause the body to lose the sense of pain. It also had a certain long-range attack ability. Because it was a soul skill that needed to be accumulated before it could be used, it could be said to be very powerful. Simply put, one had to be beaten to a certain extent before it could be used. It was a soul skill that could really turn the tables. But after using this skill, one would need to rest for at least a day to recover. Wang Feng was very surprised. This golden generation was not simple. This soul skill really looked like a 10,000-year soul skill. End of chapter. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.